All right, it's 6:30 p.m. on February the 25th, 2026, and we are starting the select board meeting. This meeting is being recorded. We have 4 members present, 1 member absent. And why don't you join me, stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mike, you want to open yours?
I can't tell if I have quorum because of
Let me close that. I think I saw Ron.
1, 2, 3. Yep. Okay, so we have quorum. What time is it? We'll open the FinCom meeting at 6:31 p.m. I'm present. We have folks online, so we'll do a quick roll call. So guys can just do a roll call. Say your name.
Carl Hummel, FinCom.
Ron, Jeremy. Not Jeremy.
I have no standing here.
Every time I see JS, I want to say that it's Jesse, and then I know that it's you. So it just, yeah. Ron, can you just do a roll call, please? Ron Zamudo, I'm assuming that's you, RZ.
Yes.
While we wait for Ron, Mike, I was informed by the town clerk today that in order to establish a quorum, you do need a majority of the committee stated membership, not its current members. So a quorum of finance committee is 4 because your membership should be 7 at its zenith, not 3 out of 6. So right now you don't have a quorum out of your 7.
Well, then we can continue.
All righty.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right, so tonight we have more budget presentations, and first up is the Board of Health. Would you like to join us up at the table, please?
Thanks. All right, do we have an official time right now? What's our time?
6:33.
6:33. Okay, at 6:33, I'm going to open the Board of Health meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Do roll call.
John Pickner here.
Joyce Gilmore here.
Alan Greenberg here. Gang's all here. New business, joint meeting with Jeremy, Select Board, Finance Committee for review and discussion of the Board of Health and Waste Collection proposed budget FY27. Jack.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Jack McClellan. I'm the Board of Health Administrator. I presented the committee for the Finance Committee for Chairman Krager and the Select Board my copy of the budget. I do have a budget and brief, 1 page that basically outlines what changes are going on for fiscal year 27. But first, I want to let Jeremy talk about our first line item, salaries and wages. So, Jeremy, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. So I've zeroed out the first 2 lines because we don't have contracts. So same thing we talked about last meeting and the meeting before. So Board of Health Administrator is within the Town Hall Union. We have negotiations on, I think, Tuesday and Thursday of next week, but we don't have an amount now, so I zeroed that out. And the health agent, I've presented an individual contract to the Board of Health for the health agent services on a, I believe, 3-year basis. And the Board of Health has a meeting right after this downstairs, and in which they'll vote on that. So those are both zeroed out right now. So we'll just focus on the non-salary pieces here. On animal inspector, we'll hear more about this from the police chief later today. It's being rolled into the IMA with the animal control officer through Uxbridge, and we may be able to see some savings there. So that number might actually come down. And then the stipends from the Board of Health members are set by town meeting, and those have been steady for as long as I've looked back. But same as yesterday, where we've zeroed out the pending stuff for negotiations.
All right, thank you, Jeremy. So for my budget proposals for fiscal year 27, well, they are having increases in the testing for the lake and landfill due to supplies and labor costs. That is going up 5%, so an additional $1,650. For supplies, I am decreasing it because I do have software, Adobe Software Creative Design Suite. Since we are moving on to Canva, group licensing for the town, I will be utilizing that instead of the Adobe Suite, so that is cost savings. So I will be removing that for this budget season.
Jack, if I could just step in for a second, I apologize. It's easier when I'm there. Sorry that I'm yelling at you from the screen. On the testing piece, so this is what we talked about at town meeting where we had the article to do the new wells and all that. So we're not seeing savings in testing like we talked about in fiscal 27. We will see that in out years. So the idea being we'll have decreased monitoring going forward, but in fiscal 27, that's just not yet actualized. So we would anticipate in fiscal 28 this being level or decreased. And then on the contract services, yep, we're purchasing enterprise licensing for Canva to do all sorts of stuff. So rather than departments doing it individually, we'll have a kind of a business license where we'll be able to get more for less sort of thing. So that's what that's at. That's where that's at.
Departments, Jeremy, because we haven't seen that on any other budgets. Is that because health was the only one purchasing this type of extra software, or it just wasn't showing up as a line item?
Yeah, so I think they were the only one purchasing this kind of additional tool. Other folks have wanted Canva style capabilities and just hadn't had it, so it's an additive for them. So once we come back and make additional final budget votes, this will be in what's called Department 155, which is information and technology. So that enterprise license will be there, so we can discuss it at that point. Because we're actively procuring a contract for managed IT services, I don't have the 155 IT contract or department budget ready to present right now. We'll do that when we come back and do kind of the second round of these in April in advance of town meeting. So the Canva license will be part of that discussion.
Before you continue, we do now have 4 members of FinCom, so we're officially at quorum. So just like to open the FinCom meeting real quick at 6:38 p.m. We'll do a quick roll call. Mike Krager.
Ron Zamuto.
Carl Hummel,
Billy Haddad.
Thank you for that, Mike.
So for that is the Board of Health budget I have proposed. Those are my changes for the Board of Health budget. So I don't know if there was more questions before we move on to the waste management collection part.
I think you're good.
Okay. Waste collection, this is going to be part of an enterprise account for subscribers. They are broken out by municipal cost and subscriber cost. So municipal collection and disposal has increased by 5%. So we raised that to 1,000. Hazardous waste collection, I did not change. That's going to remain at $10,000. So total municipal cost is only up 1,000 total, so a 3% increase. Subscriber costs, again, this is going to be the enterprise account. Subscriber cost for trash collection is going up 23,100, so that's 4%. Trash disposal is going up 1,500 for 1%. And subscriber trash administration, which is the billing side of it, is going up $250 for labor costs and postage, which is 6%. So total subscriber increase is going up $24,850 for a 4% overall increase.
And just to remind everyone, in fiscal 26, it was the first year in which this program, so associated revenue and expenditures, was taken off of the general fund and put into its own enterprise fund. And then we're continuing that in 27 and onward. There are supports that the general fund supplies to this fund. So things like the health admin salary, treasurer collector, processing, vouchers and bill payments and payroll, things like that. So eventually we will ascribe an indirect cost to this fund. But as I talked about with the Board of Health probably about a year ago at this point. We're going to give it a couple of years for the fund to get on its feet and make sure it is able to establish a balance and is fiscally healthy on its own. And then we'll start. We'll do a study. It won't be, capricious, about what general fund, what taxpayer supported processes, taxpayer supported roles support this fund. And then we'll assess the fund a fee essentially. And when I do my little snapshot that says what funds the general fund, property taxes, local receipts, state revenue, one-time stuff like free cash or stabilization, there'll be a line in there that says indirect costs. So it will be a few $100 or $1,000 from this fund as a representation of taxpayer support for this ratepayer program. But that will be, in year 4 and forward. We're just in year 2 right now.
What are your thoughts on trash costs long-term? Like these are pretty low increases. Like, do you expect those to just be maintained? It seems like it's been maintained the last few years, but everything else kind of seems exploded. So we got to continue that, or?
Usually our biggest increase is when we enter into a new contract.
Okay.
So our contract runs 3 years with 2 one-year extensions. So we kind of have a 5-year map. Whether or not we decide to do, always have in the past, but we do have the option. We could decide to go out for bid and not, take advantage of those options, but it does give us sort of a 5-year planning scale. The other thing that is going on right now, other than when the 5 years is up, is the people that actually dispose of our trash, Wheelabrator. That was a long-term contract that was negotiated, I believe it was 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
That was negotiated with a large group of towns with Wheelabrator. We're coming to the end of that contract. We're trying to Jack and Colleen are working with a group of member towns to try to decide whether they're going to go with Wheelabrator, whether they're looking for other options. So again, we can try to purchase our actual trash disposal as a group and control those costs. But they've already telling us that it's not going to be a 20-year contract. It's going to be shorter. And like everything else, we'd anticipate they're going to charge more. Wheelabrator is under new ownership.
Is it like a monopoly of a service for our area, or?
Well, there aren't a lot of options. You hear in the pipeline, there are other options that are being talked about. I think the problem you run into is how long it takes to permit some sort of a plant to dispose of this trash, whether or not the town that this plant wants to locate wants the plant. So as far as I know, there's nothing online right now. Plus you have to consider the trucking. The trucking part, the part that we paid to E.L. Harvey, could go up if the trash has to be trucked an hour. Right now, their home base is Auburn, Wheelabrator is in Millbury. And we also have an agreement with E.L. Harvey that if the truck, because of waiting time or the time that the truck gets back, it would be sitting at Wheelabrator too long to unload. We signed an agreement with them, giving them permission where they're a transfer station to actually dump after they weigh it, dump the trash on the ground, and then they collect it, put it in a bigger truck, and they'll send that truck to be disposed. So now instead of having 4 or 5 trucks sitting there waiting to get unloaded, they have 1 truck. So trucking is a huge cost.
Fuel costs and
Fuel and labor.
Okay.
You have 5 or 6 guys sitting in trucks waiting to unload. Costs a lot of money. So there's a lot of things that are being worked on in anticipation that, the 5-year agreement's going to come up, and the Wheelabrator agreement that we have that was 20 years is going to come up. You guys have been you and Colleen have been working on that for a
Yeah,
while.
we're working with other towns. We're working with KP Law as our negotiating attorney, And we're probably looking at maybe a 10-year agreement. But again, the price of per ton is negotiable, that they haven't decided yet.
Okay.
But we're supposed to get an answer sometime by the end of fiscal year.
All right. Thank you.
What exactly is the Wheeler contract? Oh.
2028.
And Jack, when is the E.L. Harvey, the collection contract up?
It's also, I believe, 2028 for the last extension.
So 2027 is so we have a 3-year contract, and 2027 is our first optionable 1-year extension, and then 2028 is the second optionable extension, and then we would need a new contract after that. I'm not sure why, but municipal solid waste collection and disposal is exempt from 30B, from competitive procurement requirements. But as I understand it, we would still competitively procure going forward. Is that right, Jack? We would put out, we would solicit
The open bid, correct.
proposals. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Does the board have any other questions?
I've done all of mine.
Anything from FinCom? I hear nothing.
Great.
All right.
I
So,
want to compliment you though. Every year, I look forward to this packet.
Yeah.
It's an excellent packet. It's so excellent. I bring it home and my wife says, "Oh, the good board came and presented today." Yes, I mean, the work that goes in is useful. Like even while you're speaking, I know you spoke to the summary, but then I was able to hit the detail while you're talking. Like it's really awesome. So I really appreciate
It's my years in corporate experience.
it.
yeah, people have asked me questions after, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. I'll get the good book.
Thank you.
That's all Jack.
No, he used Adobe.
All right,
Yeah,
so
I use Jack as an example that this is what I kind of want budget presentations. This is my medium-term goal, to get our budget being readable, explanatory, all of that sort of stuff. So Jack will be my trainer to everybody else to do this. So yeah, I appreciate your efforts. Thank you very much.
Doing the looks, my buddy.
No good deed goes unpunished.
That's right.
all right, so I'll ask for a motion. Adjourn.
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Tom, I.
Joyce, aye.
Alan, aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night. Enjoy your meeting. Thank you. All right, next up, we have the Board of Assessors. I see waiting patiently. Good evening.
Good evening. Just for the record, we're already in section.
You opened up at 6:33. You opened at 6:33?
Yes.
Always prepared. So, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. For the most part, the assessors budget has fairly stayed the same. You will notice that the map maintenance is the one that has seen a significant increase. This is because of the fact that we now have near map subscription, and that is coming out of the assessors budget. Also, last year I had to have a transfer done for the web hosting and maintenance on the camera system. And that has been added in under the map maintenance line item for the FY27 budget. That particular one, that is the online property cards that people can access on the assessors page online, and everything that goes along with that.
I just want to address that one because it seems like a pretty big miss, and it was. So we went back. So it required a transfer in fiscal 25. And I went back on our ledger to see where it was paid from in previous years. And it was paid from 3 different accounts in the previous 3 years. So it's the sort of thing that was never really captured in the budget as a cost, and that it was paid for kind of wherever there was a corner of the budget that had $9,000 available to pay for it. So it wasn't kind of adequately programmed. And now that we've identified it, we're going to program it here so we don't have to worry about kind of hoping someone else squirreled away money in either IT or select board, or general government or building maintenance. So this is identifying the cost, budgeting for it, where it belongs as an assessor cost. So that's why it's included in level service. It's not an additional service. It's definitely an additional cost to the assessor's budget, but it will not be kind of searching the couch cushions to be able to pay for it out of other departments. It will be properly budgeted where the service belongs in fiscal 27.
Plus, it's a necessary service.
It's a necessary service, and last year I actually ran to Jeremy going, where do I pay this from? I don't have a line item for it.
If I could add, it's not unusual when a long-term assessor leaves. In my own case, I found that all the annual mapping costs were paid out of wherever. And now we're a line item in my budget in Holliston. So it's not I'm just going to say it's not unusual when a long-term person leaves to find out they've been sort of doing this with a budget. And it's a good idea, in my opinion, as chair, to identify and put it where it belongs going forward.
But Kevin, I'm having lunch with Frank next week, so I'll see if yours is properly budgeted for at that point.
Are you coming to Holliston or is he coming to you?
Well, TBD, but I'll make sure you're budgeted for it too.
We have our budget review Saturday. Trust me, I am. Anyway, go ahead.
It's okay.
So that was the main line item that I just wanted to address as to why it jumped from 1,400 up to 19,000.
Is that the only IT budget item you all have, or-
That really is, yes, because the map maintenance also covers some of the work that CMRPC does with the GIS mapping online and everything. So
And
That's
the
all.
assessors are the only ones who use these tools? Or do other people in the town?
this is all accessible to everyone within the town because it's all this, all.
All the card data, but is there an interior like facing system for?
Yeah, this includes the maintenance for what's called the CAMA, the Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal Software. That's only used by the assessor's office. But it produces the data that's in the online course. Yeah, and what we're finding statewide is more and more citizens, especially since COVID, really go to the web first to look for things.
Okay.
And anybody, you have realtors, you have primarily realtors, taxpayers interested in where they're comparing themselves to other people. They go right to the web and look at that. It's unusual for a community not to have that on the web right now.
All right.
Carl has a question.
Yes, the near map, it's being used by multiple town departments, including the Board of Assessors. I know the Conservation Commission is using it. Is there a way to have it in more of a general town budget, or is it appropriate to be under the BOA budget?
I can take that, Terry. So Sherry, sorry. We had a general government budget previous to, I think, up until 2023, and then that got kind of farmed out to constituent departments, and the select board has been the catch-all for stuff that touches every department. This is primarily an assessor's function. Lots of other departments do use it, including me, so select board as well. But it was the genesis of getting the service was assessors. So if we're going to park it anywhere, for me, it made most sense in the assessor's budget. And if it wasn't here, it's not like if the expense wasn't here, it's not like the budget would stay here. The budget would follow the expense. So it needs to live somewhere. And because this is where the the thrust of getting it was. It made sense to me to park it here budgetarily.
Okay, is this sort of like the IT site-wide licenses like we have for Microsoft products?
I think that's a little different because it involves individual licenses for
Okay.
for roles and responsibilities, whereas this is kind of a as needed basis, right? Not everyone uses Nearmap, right? The HR is not using Nearmap, but HR is using, Word and
Yep.
Excel and whatnot. So because the ask was from here and the biggest use case is from the assessor's office, I put the licensing cost here. To remind everyone, this was funded at town meeting initially, at special town meeting in the fall for the previous for the first year startup. So we knew there was going to be an ongoing cost, and that's why it's an additional. But I think it's it's a great tool. Conservation uses it a lot. I've used it a few times. Planning, zoning has used it, so it's been really beneficial.
Jeremy, if I could add to that, the same question came up in my town, and I did a survey of about 20 towns. And in all 20 unanimously, it was in the assessor's budget, no matter what other departments used it. And all the towns had looked at, do we apportion it to this and that, and they couldn't really figure out a good way of doing it. So they all put it in the assessor's budget.
I mean, I leave it this way. It was nowhere before.
Yes.
It's got a home now.
Yeah.
The best point is you got multiple departments using it. What we want
Yes.
software like this to be
Yes.
broadly used across departments. So where the accounting takes place is not an issue for me.
Yeah, and as it stands right now, just about every department in the town has reached out to me, and they are signed up and using Nearmap.
And there is not a
Everybody.
marginal cost per user either. So we are encouraging folks to say, hey, do you want to use this twice a year? Great, we'll get you an account and get going.
Yeah, I'd be curious to understand what kind of API opportunities there are with this type of software, with OpenGov, things like that.
Beyond my current understanding, but we can figure that out.
Oh, yeah,
And we can always set up a meeting with Nearmap and,
I didn't understand the question. Just
Can it interface with other softwares?
It doesn't have integration
Yeah.
points for bigger pieces of software to use.
It does have API, application programming interface abilities. It's not like plug.
There's no pre-built connector.
There are for fee.
Everything has a cost, but the idea, OpenGov and the parcel cards, things like that, when you look at the permitting and things like that.
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, the more information you can share across systems for.
Oh, absolutely.
informational stuff.
The ability is there. It's a matter of the implementation, but the ability is built in, definitely.
I am digressing now, so I just pull me back.
That's all right.
It's a big deal for
Yeah.
a lot of assessors are connecting everything together.
I mean, I know that you pass information to the permitting department in terms of, land sales, things like that, and it's by paper or lists, things, Excels, things like that.
yes, I do a monthly transfer list that I,
Eliminate lists and sort of integrate. That's gonna be a time saver from both sides.
The great thing I've seen in other towns is somebody will make a complaint about illegal dumping and you can't readily see the property. You just put down aerially, yep, or no. And it also gives you the time sequences. So you can watch the property change over the years, and those photos are there.
Anything additionally you guys want to call out? I mean,
I like to highlight one thing on the salary line. So it is included here. The principal assessor has a 3-year contract with a salary in year 3 as TBD in her initial contract. And the Board of Assessors has, so I submitted a proposal for year 3. The Board of Assessors voted on it. And so that's included in here. And again, consistent with our compensation classification study. And it includes the $1,000 additional for being a mass accredited assessor. So that is kind of signed, sealed, and delivered from the Board of Assessors, and included in this budget request here.
Well, then thank you for coming out and presenting today. We
Thank
appreciate you taking the time. 7 p.m. on the dot.
We're adjourned at 7 PM.
Make a motion in a second.
All right, Chief, we'll see you in a little bit.
See you in a couple minutes.
Favor, chief?
All right, time for the library.
Apparently, it's just me at the moment, so.
That's all right.
Say, Jeremy, I had a quick question for you. Did you happen to send that outline to the select board?
I have the budget here that I'm sharing, but let me pull up your outline.
I can send it out to them right now. I've got it queued up.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, hold on.
I'll pull it up as well.
Sorry, 1 second. Here we go. Okay, it should have sent. I have print copies too if you want, but I kind of boiled it down from previous years just to cover what the additions are this year for the library. Jeremy, I don't know if you wanted to speak to the salary portion of that.
Yeah, so I kept we have a placeholder here. It's all very kind of early stages here. So the library director has a contract with the library trustees, as does the children's librarian. That position at 30 hours a week never had a formalized employment agreement. We have circulated a formalized agreement to the director and the trustees to say, hey, let's treat this the same as the director. There are also conversations between that position and the town hall union about adding that to the union. And then we have all of the part-time staff, all the library aides and technicians that work less than full-time hours. And I have a wage proposal for that as well. But because there's kind of these moving pieces in terms of the trustees vote and these possible union integration, that's also a moving piece here. So what the library budget has that's unique to them, and people use the word unique to mean uncommon, but it's unique now, is that the books budget needs to be a percentage of the overall budget. So as the salary budget and as everything else moves, the books budget then moves to maintain a 19% share of the overall budget. So as other parts of the budget get tinkered with, that books budget will get tinkered with. So the salary piece is an approximate and pretty close, and I think is not going to be a budget buster one way or the other, but it's definitely not set in stone right now. The piece that is, I think, kind of for debate and discussion tonight is that in fiscal 26, there were 4 additional hours for library aides that was picked up by the state revenue fund. So to remind everyone, on our cherry sheet, on our state revenue sheet, we have a library revenue line, and that goes into a specific fund, which the library trustees control. Those 4 additional hours, which allowed the library to open on Monday, was paid for out of the state fund. The proposal in 2027 is to bring those 4 hours onto the general fund. And the request for 27 is to add 2 additional hours on the general fund to increase hours on Monday. So right now, how do we pay for those 2 hours? Do we put them on the general fund? Do we put them somewhere else? But those 4 hours that were in fiscal 26 on the state fund, we're looking to bring those onto the general fund for fiscal 27.
Clarify, would
absorbing 4 from last year and 2 additional. So 6 total?
Yeah, potentially 2, but it depends on what what's decided as far as what happens with the 2.
I just want to make sure that I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, so 4 from last year, right? This year, we're paying the 4 through state aid. FY '27, potentially that just goes into the salaries budget. Well, all right, so yeah, we'll talk, well, I mean, we'll talk about, we'll talk about that. I mean, that's kind of a long range thing. So, at the moment, we're looking at just kind of rounding out Monday, so I can get Monday solved. The idea of an additional 13 hours open would require another, is that what you're talking about, the other
Yeah,
position?
well, so, and not that I'm not trying to nitpick on the hours. I am just curious, why
Yeah.
is Monday just a very more important day than Saturday as far as like kids and like patrons of the.
My feeling is, I mean, we'll talk about the schedule and where we'd like to go with it. I mean, could the 2 hours be used elsewhere? Probably.
Trying to really hit after.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think that's the issue with the Monday is that we close at 3 and that doesn't allow for, families and children to, school age children to come in. So that's limiting. So I just used, I worked from the figure that Jeremy had put together for staff salaries. And so the books figure works off of that. However, that is still like level service. So the 3 lines that we've asked for additions beyond level service funding are in salaries, where I mentioned the 2 hours that we're looking for. In library programming, we're looking for an additional, I believe it was 2,000, yes. And then in miscellaneous expenses, we're looking at an addition of 2,500. Jeremy and I discussed this, have discussed this at monthly meetings, that the library, we've been there in the new, well, it's not a new location, it's 10 years now. But having been in the location for 10 years and having had patrons in and using the building and using furniture and that, the idea was to potentially create a furniture line, doesn't necessarily have to be miscellaneous, but a new furniture line to address furniture that is starting to sort of.
Okay, so that's just replace, because 2,500 is low, so you're just trying to replace some as you go.
Right, yeah, in fact, what's happened up to this point is the Friends had a renovation fund, or a renovation fund that they've had for the last 10 years. And we've actually pulled from for various purchases, for furniture, whatever it might be for the library and use in, I think I'm trying to think of some of the things that we've done. Most of the time it's been furniture. But we're down to the last like 2,500 of that fund, which we will be putting towards some furniture in the periodicals room. And at that point, the question is where are we going to get the money going forward to replace some of the items that we have in the library that are heavy use. So we're just trying to be proactive in that way.
And yeah, so this was a cyclical idea. So this is not one time. This is something that will be programmed every year. So this is to say the library has these 10 items they want to replace this year, and next year there's going to be another 10 items, and this may go to $3,000 2 years from now. So this is to kind of refresh their furniture and equipment within the building on a cyclical and recurring basis.
Gradually go forward with what needs to be replaced.
People need good chairs to read good books.
Yeah, exactly.
Carl, do you have a question?
Yes, the 19% spending on books, is that a state requirement?
Yes,
or federal?
the state, yep. There's a municipal appropriation requirement. There's also a materials expenditure requirement, but the 19% is mandated through the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. And so anytime our budget goes up, or salaries or a line like a furniture line, that sort of thing, we have to make that adjustment to ensure that the 19% is being spent on circulating materials.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So on the cyclical furniture replacement, do we expect this to be a line item that shows up cyclically, or is it going to be every year?
I expect it'll be every year.
Okay.
Yeah, going forward. So that would be my.
Yeah, $2,500 does not replace all of their furniture. So the worst stuff gets replaced right now, and then next year, whatever's worse at that point. So it's rather than saying let's have 15 grand to replace everything right now, even if everything doesn't need replacement, it's let's pick off the greatest need right now and program that into the budget so it doesn't get eaten up by other stuff in the out years.
So fixed line.
Yeah, community services for furniture. And this is one of the biggest problems that the schools have run into is waiting like too long to do this. So I think this is great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't want to, a couple of years from now, tell you, hey, listen, by the way,
No, it's hard when
we
you
need 10,000 for,
I guess that was going to be the other. It's just a capital planning request.
That's a good point. Jeremy, did you have the capital planning discussion when you talked about this, or?
So a little bit. Andrew and I talked about this a little bit before. So if we waited 5, 7, 10 years, it would raise the level of the capital request. And what this does is it essentially programs capital within the operating budget, which is a budgetary best practice to be able to do pay-as-you-go capital. So larger communities, this number would be, 200,000 rather than 2,500. But what we're able to do is stave off the one-time $40,000 request and say, let's do $2,500 a year for the next decade and do this piecemeal.
let's see. I don't know if you want me to go individually through those lines at all, or I mean, if you have.
Well, so I'll ask the board, both boards, if anybody wants to call out any specific lines. Elena?
Yeah, I have a question about
Sure.
the facilities and sort of what goes into that, and is there any of the facility costs that could go to the town facilities now that we have more centralized town facilities?
I mean, I think that's a possibility. So are you talking about like the building maintenance line specifically?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
I can take that, Andrew. So the centralized building maintenance. So this 24,850 that we have here is the stuff that the library needs to do to kind of keep the building up and running and functional. The centralized piece is stuff that we weren't doing before. So this is the 24,000 is stuff that, and you can, Andrew, you can talk about the individual pieces that make that up, but this is stuff that we need all the time, every year, and we know about. Whereas the $80,000 that we have in, I think it's 192 as a department, that's the more preventative, that's the upgrades, that's the, I don't want to say nice to have, but stuff that otherwise wasn't being covered. Whereas when we say, and we talked about a little bit about it yesterday with Council on Aging, where a department is responsible for their individual building, this is stuff that they need specific to their building to keep it up and running on a yearly basis. And then the 192 is the kind of more transformative projects.
What are some examples for this line? I mean, Jeremy, you pointed out this budget's different than every other budget. So when, I'm just curious what the 24,000, what is the building maintenance that you're doing yourself?
HVAC maintenance, typically if there's electrical issues. Elevator definitely falls into that.
Cleaning services?
I believe, janitorial is under that currently. Sorry.
It seems like some of that would be centralized, Jeremy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that there has been discussions about taking HVAC, electrical services, cleaning services, and looking to do a one contract for all town facilities. And if we do that, then we will sit down with different buildings and say, okay, we're gonna pull that money out of there and put it into that centralized building maintenance account.
Yeah, in fact, I've talked with you before, John. Yeah, so for example, with HVAC, right now we're contracted with the company. It may not be the company they eventually want to go with that'll cover other departments along with the library. So I think that's just a matter of that piece moving over.
So I was just thinking, so because the library is unique in having books piece tied to all of the other expenses.
Right.
If there is a maintenance expense that could be offset in another line in the budget, that would reduce the need for, I mean,
Right.
I don't know, like.
We'll have to talk about that too, because
But that
yeah.
19% is big.
Yeah.
The
Well, I know,
19% a floor, the 19% a floor, not a ceiling. So it would reduce our obligation. We can keep the books line at 21% if we wanted to. It doesn't force our hand to buy fewer books if we change something budgetarily.
So Jeremy, I look at this though, that dynamics, I was gonna say the same thing, is that this is very much like snow and ice. We want to be really careful in how we budget because there are certain rules that snow and ice goes under that we want to keep at a certain level so we can always do, debt financing. In the same way, we want to be careful how we grow the library budget, do it the right way, the smart way, so that we're not necessarily getting hit with a 19, that 19% that line item will grow when we may not need to grow the book line item, but because we grew the budget, we're growing the book line item. That's going to be very cognizant of that.
One of the things to consider too is that the state looks at, how have you been funded over the last X number of years? So we have to be careful with how much actually comes out of the budget as well.
25,000 just goes missing, they might.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, I think I'd have to get a clarification from the MBLC.
We would need a waiver from MBLC if the library budget is reduced by a percentage that is greater than other departmental reductions. You need to get a waiver, or you need to explain it to MBLC. And this is a super reasonable, and the thing that the waiver is created for, right? Saying we're centralizing building maintenance and this is no longer a library. So it wouldn't get us in trouble, and it's not a reason to not do it, but it's just a consideration that we need to contextualize and justify this with an outside agency before we make any sort of change.
Number of years running, or we used to get waivers from the state.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think we're 11 or 12 years now running without having to apply for a waiver, which is wonderful.
We have the opportunity to possibly reduce overall cost of that line item and then be more flexible with what we do with it.
Right.
We could reduce the budget of the library for level services, or we could use it for additional hours or additional something. So
I think getting some of every department getting some of the operational load off of your shoulders and into the hands of the experts is always better.
Yeah, I think it's already been a really good thing. So,
and I would guess we took any action here, it would have to be across the whole enterprise, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they will say, why is it just the library being centralized?
Yeah, and there is there's kind of an unfair expectation of police chief, fire chief, highway super, library director, COA director, and that they have their own buildings, whereas everyone at town hall is not responsible for their own building. And so part of their skill set, their job description, their day-to-day is managing buildings, where I don't have a master's in library science, but I don't know if they taught elevator maintenance in that program. I just imagine they didn't. So like, that's not really what.
Yeah, there have been plenty of times that I've wondered why this wasn't covered in library school. But I mean,
yeah,
I actually should wonder. It's clearly something that's a little bit outside of my purview. Some things I've had to learn over time too. So
I think Andrew does a really nice job of keeping that building in a really working and public friendly space set. But that's not kind of what we hired him for. So yeah, centralizing that, I see the wisdom in it. And I think that I said it yesterday, it's not a great answer, but it's the way because it's been that way. So we can certainly look at, so John Dudley from Highway Facilities is here. So we'll talk about that a little bit more going forward. But I think there's an opportunity to centralize those sorts of things in the ways that we've done, printing and other operations, which individual departments don't need to be responsible for.
the last page of the document you were.
Yeah, tell me about your future.
So, just to sort of let you know sort of what's been going on over at the library, we actually had, we have a 5-year strategic plan. We're in the 4th year of that plan. And a number of the elements of things that we're looking for are part of that strategic plan. One of which was to determine what to do with the rectory that's attached to the building. So very recently, well, we had the rectory subcommittee formed about 1.5 years ago, and then hired an architect to take a look at the rectory and see if it could be repurposed in its current form. And so we've received that study from them. And that study, the feasibility study, then was the findings of that were presented to the capital planning committee a couple of weeks ago. It's the kind of a thing we know. Obviously, there are other considerations in town, other departments that are looking and have particular needs. But now that the study is completed, it's the kind of thing we're looking at as potentially being able to do, or hopefully being able to do, 5 years down the road, maybe it's a little longer. And so
As an expansion of the library?
As an expansion of the library, which would, solve certain issues for us. One of our issues is the noise issue. All of our spaces in the library outside of a couple of offices are open to the public. So it doesn't really allow for individuals to sort of browse the library without hearing a lot of extraneous noise. So the rectory itself would be a programming space, but it would also be a space for storage, which we have not enough of, clearly. It would also be a space for quiet study and being able to have a meeting in a room, which is a closed room and not open to the public. Sometimes it's difficult to have a meeting when you have sensitive topics. Right. So, so that's been looked into, and like I said, presented to the capital planning committee. We're hopeful at some point being able to address that. And then another piece was staffing and hours. And I think last year we talked about, well, what is it, where do you want to go with the hours? Currently, we're at 35 hours a week. We'd like to get to 48 at some point, but it's the kind of thing that wouldn't happen overnight. I mean, we're looking at like maybe the next 3 to 5 years. If it was just a matter of, let's try to get ourselves open for additional hours, which I think is helpful. I don't know if it would be completely worth it unless that position was like a value added type of position. And one of the things that we don't have at the library, obviously we have myself and the children's librarian who are full-time. We do not have an adult and teen services librarian. It's the kind of position we'd be looking to either, have as a full-time position, say 30 hours a week. If not, it could be the kind of position that starts at 19 and then grows to a 30-hour-a-week position, very much like what happened with the children's librarian. Currently, the children's librarian and I handle adult programming and teen programming, but it's really outside the children's librarian's purview. She's supposed to be sort of focused on the children's collection and the children's programming. I do some planning of programs. The Friends also do some planning of programs. We don't have somebody who's exclusive to that, who can address the collection, who can address program needs. Ideally, that person would be someone who's maybe a little bit more technology forward. We'd like to be able to provide instruction, tech instruction, whether that's, with individual devices, computer programs, that sort of thing. It's the kind of thing we're not currently doing. Which
you liaison with the schools to like find out what they need in that, like what they're lacking at that area. Like, I was thinking you were talking about.
I'm thinking more in terms of like adult education, although
beyond high school then.
Yeah, I mean, it would be beyond high school. I mean, typically that's the direction we'd look. Not that you couldn't look at.
Was that like help with job applications, help with like, is that
I think
spread all over the place? Like that's not just reading and studying, but also practical skills.
Yeah, employment skills, that sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely. I think if we had a position like that, that would really help us out. Obviously, the fringe benefit is that we'd be able to expand on other days as well. So that's what we're looking at. But like I said, it's not an immediate thing, the kind of thing that we hopefully could develop over the next 3 to 5, maybe a little bit more years. But I just wanted to sort of say that that's something that's on the horizon for us.
Right, there's, yes, who's JC?
Jesse.
Jesse, there you go. I gotta memorize everybody's initials. Sorry, you're really little. Go ahead, Jesse.
Hey everyone, Jesse, Finance Committee. I was just wondering, as we talk about any expansion or just the budget in general, is there data on the library's patronage in general, daily, monthly, yearly, per program? I hadn't heard any of that.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I have to keep that from the state. I typically have to provide programming statistics, circulation statistics that are for the state, for the ARIS report end of year and the state aid report. So yeah, there are.
Monthly reports to the trustees as well.
Right, yes. As a matter of fact, yeah, and every month there's a section on programs, and I typically will, list out what the attendance is of those. I would say that a lot of our like in-house created programming, there's wait lists for, particularly story times and lapsed story times. There are
space constraint, or is that like the?
It's a little bit of a space constraint. I mean, I certainly the upstairs can have 25 to 30 people, but it gets a little dicey sometimes. Yeah, and then and we can't accommodate everybody, so there is typically a wait list. Like I said, some of our in-house things like book club do really well. Then we have presenters and other programs that come in that we have a lot of wait lists for as well. So the programming side of things is really the part that's grown the most, I feel, in the last 5-6 years since we moved into the new building. Yeah. Circulation's good. If you combine, print with the electronic circulation, our numbers are good there. If anybody is ever interested, I have the ARIS reports, and I can, send them to you if you'd like.
Carl?
Hold on, I'm fighting back a sneeze. You're looking to extend evening hours and Saturday. Are you collecting metrics on who is using the library after 5 p.m. on the week and after 11 p.m.? Are you able to look and see how many disappointed people are having to leave as you close?
I don't know if it's that granular, but
well, that kind of granularity is exactly what would make a compelling case at town meeting that for why you want the hours. It's because people are actually using the library for that, would be using it that extra hour in the evening.
I think it's unreasonable to say, do you count the people who are sad at the afternoon on Saturday when we're not there to count them? So yeah, I feel you, Andrew.
Yeah, we were just talking.
Based thing.
Yeah. We have done surveys. We actually did a program survey. I'm trying to think if it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It might be a little bit longer. We should certainly do that again, and collect the data again and see.
I mean, evenings. That right, like that. There's a huge audience for the post-work, post-school.
Right, and I think one of our issues is it's great to be open until 7 p.m., but a lot of people don't really unwind and have dinner until like 6:30.
Right.
We'll usually like 10 minutes maybe to get to the library. So I think that's an area where it would be nice to bump it an extra hour for those individuals. But I mean, we can certainly recreate the survey that we had done previously and start to put together some metrics.
Yeah, I mean, to Jesse's question and question, like things like that in these presentations really help with articulating the reasons behind it using data. Right, we all know they'd love to keep it open more.
Right,
we got to show the value.
Sure. Yep.
Anything that pulls that whole story together is always super.
Yeah, in fact, that's something I can, I have a couple of trustees who are really good at sort of honing in on this as well. So I can sit down with them and we can talk about some of the things that we could do. Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Does anybody have anything else for Andrew at the library tonight? How you feeling about the library in general?
I mean, the things I think are really good. I mean, I think that, like I said, the programming end of things, there's mornings I don't even have a parking space. So,
How's the parking lot doing?
so far it's great. Yeah. I mean, obviously last year it was resurfaced and we gained like another 5. So that was a good thing.
I was gonna say, we spent $70,000 on it, so the answer better be great.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. And, I think our circulation, like print circulation, is maybe not as strong year to year at this point, but electronics growing. So that's just kind of where things are at. But overall circulation has typically been up. So, but yeah, in terms of support from the town and what we're doing and the sorts of programs we provide and summer reading and the boat race and all of those sorts of things, we feel good. And the group that is currently there, along with the senior abatement folks that we've got and a couple of volunteers, it's just a great group of people. I couldn't really ask for more.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
And you said it's 10 years in the current phase.
Yes,
So
10 years come, I want to say June. So yeah, I can't believe it myself. It's been that long.
Throw a party?
it's the new library, right?
New library.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
In the bricks in that Eagle project.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was yesterday.
Like it was yesterday, like I had hair. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Chief, why don't you tell us about the police department budget?
All right, which one we're gonna put up first? We got a few of them. We put them up.
It's up to Mr. Stoll.
Yeah,
Jeremy, which
whatever
one?
you want, chief. What do you want?
Doesn't
Do you want
matter.
to do the police department or do you want to do the dispatch, et cetera?
Police department it is.
Right. Dealer's choice. All right. So PD, again, as Jeremy talked about, mostly is just level services. 90, I did the math today, right now, 89.5% of my budget is completely salaries and contractual. So I only have about 12% to talk about. And if you take the cruises out of there, which in most departments at Capital, then it's 92% is all salaries. So it's contractual salaries, not much I can do to adjust those. We have to pay them, obviously. So let's talk about the other 8%. One of the things that we're going to talk about is the admin assistant in the police department. I think you touched on that with the fire department last week. So when we looked into dispatch, the previous TA and I, we came up with the agreement to go to a dock station, but at the same time, we felt it was important not to lose coverage during the day, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. So residents could come in. We do see a lot of traffic through the police station on a regular basis, whether it's records requests, accident reports. So we felt it was important to have a face there during those hours. At that time, the deal was we'd fund it through the dispatch savings that we made. But because I didn't have the amount of work, 40 hours worth of work for that person, we share it as a admin for the fire department. It would be essentially a certain amount of time for the fire department with Bill Kessler at the time, and the rest of them would be office hours and then picking up what we realized we were losing from having dispatchers there. I think we've got to a point, and Jeremy and I have talked about this, that I still want to keep that person there. But at the same time, Jason needs someone down there because he's grown in his admin duties with the fire department. But also I've discovered that we haven't been able to actually pick up everything that we lost with dispatch, from 3 dispatchers doing admin duties, accident reports. And now we have cameras. So we have body worn cameras. We didn't have that when we originally went to regional dispatch.
I mean, the workflow to
The workflow for the records requests to obtain all that information between individual citizens, the state, and lawyers in the courts.
Do we do the like scrub work, or does that go to another?
We have software that does a scrub, but we have to review it to make sure it's done.
So there's
properly.
always like one of our humans.
Yes, there has to be at that level, because if we release something, then we violate the law and we can get sued. You know, obviously, if we release something that we shouldn't.
So just out for everybody's edification, if you're not aware, Mendon's a body camera town, and our body camera footage is going to have personal identifiable information in it, because it's definitely not always going to have just those two people. And when a request comes in, we have to, blur faces, blur license plate. Like, we have to take all the PII that's not related to the original request, probably more than I'm even saying, out of that. And we need special software to do that, and we pay for that. And then we need a human to ensure that PII is actually being blanked out when we send that stuff out.
Exactly.
So it's
It's not the officer, so the officer's looking at his pad and writing something down that has someone's social security number, date of birth. Obviously, all that stuff has to be scrubbed. If there's a juvenile involved with the call, we can't remove the juvenile. We have to completely probably just clip that right out, not even scrub them. We got to clip it like they weren't even there. So there's a lot of work involved with that. That's additional to what we were doing previous to regionalizing dispatch. And again, with post police officer standard training commission, that came about afterwards too. There's a lot we have to do with post now too. Records requests. So what I've done is, Terry can't take it all on because she's also helping with the fire chief with his admin work. I've assigned officers to do it. So officers are picking up that extra work, certain officers, but it really shouldn't be there. So with this position, I think it would be proper to separate it. I will have enough work to fill that position. So even though the fire department will have their own admin, we can fill that other work and get officers doing officers' work instead of admin work.
Were officers like coming off the streets do this work, or they were just doing extra admin time?
So
were you paying them?
So for instance, we have a corporal who's a detective who is inside sometimes doing detective work. He'll pick up a lot of that. He's in the station, but now it's taking away from the investigations that he's doing. And we only have one detective now since Detective Mason retired. So it's bogging down his casework. And sometimes I have to remind him, hey, you need to get this done first. But we also have deadlines. You have 10 days to respond to requests. We got to process them. And if we can't do it in 10 days, we explain why. And just saying because he's busy doing detective work isn't enough reason not to keep them there.
Right. Then that can cost them.
Exactly. If someone files something against us. So to justify that position, I think we have the work necessary, and I'll go into staffing too. I think over the past, Jeremy, anything you want to say about that position?
Jess said he's going to step away.
Oh, okay.
That'll be right.
So that
Yeah,
position,
I heard the question as I stood up. Exactly. So the savings will be slightly on sorts of overtime, pulling stuff off of folks, but will generally be productivity savings from a patrol standpoint, from a patrol person doing admin work. So it won't necessarily be a dollar savings; it'll be a productivity one. And then right now, the executive assistant that's. Again, so we've got a police executive assistant and then a police and fire shared executive assistant. So we have a 2.0 FTE there. We are looking to move that shared police and fire over to fire completely, but make it a 0.8. So that will be 32 hours a week at the fire department, and then add a 1.0 FTE admin position in the police department. So we would go from 2 to 2.8. Reflective of or representative of the increased admin work necessary for the fire department as we, again, professionalize operations and go from what used to be, a call department to a combination department to an increasingly full career department, and then a reflection of the increased responsibilities from the police department that the chief just responded here or reviewed here. So. It's additive. It is certainly additive. We are adding a head, we are adding benefits, but we are also adding productivity on both the admin side and then on the police side as well, on the officer side as well.
Mr. Goddard?
It just, I mean, we could say admin in a sense, people might interpret that as clerical, things like that, but I feel based on the description of the level of specialization, possibly sensitivity in terms of the materials being handled.
Yeah.
That would require this to be somewhat insular to the police department.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a skills-based position, and it's going to be, you're gonna be trained, you're going to be CORE certified. You're going to be almost the same level as a sworn personnel, you're just not sworn personnel. So,
All right. I mean, I'm all in favor of police officers doing the police work we've paid them for. So, it seems reasonable.
all right, so now I'll go into staffing. So every year I always ask for another police officer. I do it on purpose because I want to remind everyone where our staffing currently is. Jeremy and I talked about this. I'm obviously not asking for police officers this year, but I want to make sure it stays on the radar. We currently have an officer who's been on admin leave for a couple of years, and we have new officers in training. So realistically, it'd be inappropriate to try to add a person on it right now when we got to get back to a steady baseline. So I wouldn't want to take any of those funds when they could be used elsewhere right now. We can look at it down the road. Realistically, I've talked about this before. A community our size, you do a multiplier of like 2.5 per thousand. So that would put us at 15.75. So say 16 officers. We currently have 14. And then you would add the chief on top of that. So we've been working for the past 10 years with less staff than we should have, but making it work. But we're starting to kind of see the chinks in that armor now. And I pulled some stats to look at it next year. I'll give you a nice book that will really break this down, because there's a lot to the stats that if you just look at them and say, well, geez, your call volume actually decreased this year. So 2022, our call volume was 5,400. 2023 went to 6,100. 2024, 6,200, and then down to 5,700 this year. So you'd say, well, geez, you're not as busy, but not necessarily. So part of that is our car stops are in there and all our motor vehicle interactions. And if you actually pull that out, you realize our call volume has actually gone up every single year. It just last year, our motor vehicle stats went down because we were too busy doing the regular police work.
It's not because Mendon's safe for drivers.
No, not at all. Not even a bit. If you look at Facebook and everybody talk, the biggest complaint is
driving through. I was being hopeful.
Yeah. So just for instance, car stops, we had 2,422, 3,123, 3,224, and we went down to 2,600 last year. Part of that, when I dived into the stats, is we have other things going on that take up more of our time from the officers. Our mental health calls, which has been huge since COVID, we've more than doubled since COVID. So each one of those calls are time sensitive and take up a lot of time. It's not like you go to a disturbance of a dog barking and you're in and out within the 15 to 30 minute period. These are things that are follow-ups. Just a call alone could take a whole entire shift. So that's decreasing our motor vehicle stats, but at the same time, our other calls are going up. So I'm really trying to break this down to figure out where we are. And it goes back down to bandwidth too. I think, Mike, you've talked about this. What is our bandwidth? When I became the chief in 2016, 17, we added a 14th officer. We're at 13. And I think then we needed the officer, but our bandwidth was maybe still, 40% capacity. We could handle 40% more work. But over the past 10 years, I think we've got to that point where we're at like 90 to 95% of our bandwidth. And part of it is, the admin that will help out too. We're going to take back, get officers on the road, not doing stuff that a dispatcher can do or admin person can do. But we're going to get to the point where to have 3 officers on each shift and to be able to do investigative work, have an SRO officer and a chief, you can't do it in 14 officers. It's impossible.
Do you have stats on calls that weren't able to be addressed because you were over capacity already?
So that ties in with the fire department, actually. So as long as I've been here for 30 years, we go to every fire call. And we do that because a lot of the time we're already on the road. We don't have to leave the station, which we're trained first responders. Most of the time we're there first. The lights are there to help the fire department to get in quicker, but we're also there to start life-saving measures. Over the past 4 years, we've actually missed on fire calls. The past year being the most, under 31 of them, where we were tied up either on our own calls or out of town or dealing with someone in a cell. And that increased last year from 84. So it's 50 more calls this year that we missed, which I think are essential. This is what's starting to concern me, because if we're the first ones there, that extra 2 or 3 minutes could help the fire department save a life. You know, by us starting CPR, getting them in faster, because sometimes, a lot of times in Mendon, everybody doesn't, their houses aren't lit up properly, they're not labeled properly. Sometimes you can't find an address on a mailbox. If we're there ahead of time, it gets them right in. Yeah.
I mean, so Dave's come to us, I don't know, 4 years running now saying, I need more people, but I'm not gonna ask this year.
Right.
So it's, Jeremy, what I'd like to try to do is treat this more like fire now, to say, okay, we, with the fire budget, we're saying we're looking at 2 this year. You flat out said nothing next year, 2 the following year, right? I would want to do something similar here to say, can we more definitively start to plan on when we think, I'm hearing a case to increase to 1 or 2 officers more right here, but can we start to think about, rather than, plan saying it won't be this budget, it might be 1 in the following year, just kind of.
We talked a little bit about that today, and Jeremy had a great idea of maybe every contract cycle for the next 10 years, try to have 1. Because I think we really, right now at the statistics we have for right now, what we should have and what we should have had the past 10 years is 17 officers. And we've been at 14. So I think if we could incrementally over the next 10 years, add that.
Elena, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, you mentioned that you have a lot of mental health calls and they take a lot of time. Are there officers that specialize in mental health that could help with that burden that
So I think we've done a great job. We started up a CIS team, and Sergeant Coffey leads that. Over half the department's trained in mental health. I have been to the classes, training. So we have people available on shift to be able to assist. And the goal is to probably get 100% there, just because it's become part of our job now.
But I wonder about in adding someone who could manage some of that. I don't know if that would be helpful, since it is an increasing.
Different type of resource that maybe just.
So we also are part of a regional group where clinicians are available. So once it gets to the extent where it's beyond us, the clinicians handle it. So we actually have clinicians that are on staff regionally that handle that. And we're part of a group that, through the drug money that came in from all the pharmacy suits, we actually fund that, and we share it with Uxbridge and a few other towns. So once it gets to that extent, the clinician's there, but we still manage it. So it's not the clinician doesn't go there by themselves. Again, you consider the dangerous situations. And we dealt with that a few years ago, I think on Northbridge Road. Everybody remembers that time that we were out searching for someone in the woods. There made a big deal about it, but that's because the state with their clinicians went to a dangerous situation on their own and thought it was a good idea at the time, until the person punched the person, pulled the knife, and threatened to kill him. And we found out about it afterwards. And everybody said, well, why didn't you do your job? Because we have to work together. Because I understand it's a mental health issue, and maybe they don't want to see a police officer, but a police officer needs to be around in case something like that happens. We can't be called when someone's in the woods with a machete threatening to kill people. So we've learned in that situation and tried to work with our partners to make sure we're involved with that, to keep them safe too. Because it's not just about keeping the individual safe, you have to keep the clinician safe. So
I just want to clarify that drug money means opioid manufacturer settlement money.
They know what it is.
Almost made the news.
Gotcha. So I think.
Carl has a question.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Carl.
Okay. Is there budget money, for example, with the Council on Aging that would be able to help with some of the mental health calls, or is it strictly a police responsibility?
Well, the money we have right now that we're using comes from these lawsuits. So it's really, we don't need any, money's not even in our budget for that. We actually take that from an external source right now.
But it's an indirect cost because your officer's on that call and not on traffic stops or the other things you've been referring to.
Because you could break it down, but really that's part of our job now too. So that is part of police work
Okay.
now.
Okay. Changing to a different subject, since I have the floor, point out that we are currently looking at a noise bylaw and perhaps passing it at the May town meeting. That would result in calls to the non-emergency police line that your department would need to deal with, and then the dispatcher would then say whether a police officer would be sent out or another town employee. So that's another staffing ramp up that will be coming in the next, it may be coming in the next year.
Thanks, Kyle. I forgot all about that. I wasn't even thinking about that there. And I know I say ask every year, next year will be the ask. There'll be no question about it. I know it's not the third year of the contract, but next year will definitely be the ask. I think there's no reason we won't be where we need to be to get that extra officer on up and running. Because right now, still, we run, even with the officers we have, there are midnight shifts that right now I have 3 on, but I'm short on day shift. When I put day shift back to the staff, it should be once everybody's trained. There are shifts on midnights where there's only 2 officers on. That means you have someone on Cape Road and someone at the zoo, and no one around here in the middle. And that also means their closest backup could be 15 minutes away, 10 minutes away. Without a supervisor also.
How hard is it to recruit to fill a position?
You know what, we go through phases. It's like a roller coaster up and down. Sometimes it's hard for every department around here. Lately, our highest, it's been pretty easy. I think we've built a good department here collectively. The morale is high. People want to work here. So I haven't had a hard time finding anybody.
Good to hear.
Quick.
Yeah. Quickly.
Hey, my point is this, if you're already saying we will definitely need a body in the next fiscal year, why wouldn't we try to proactively bring that up? I mean, you will have a need.
Mhm.
If we could address that need sooner than later, why wouldn't we try? And I know what the recruiting was like, so that are you in the chance, could you miss a great candidate for a position we would love to fill next year because we waited a year?
Well, I don't want to burn out the FTOs. We're in the middle of training 4 right now. We do have a retirement coming next spring, and that's why I target it when I start doing that recruitment, which Jeremy and I have talked about will probably be in the next few months. Because even though I start the recruitment, say March or April, by the time the resumes come in and we actually look at people, I'm not going to be doing any hiring till July or August. And then if we decide we want someone in the academy or someone's going to go to the academy, then it's that spring anyways. So we've kind of backed our way into where we are now, where I can't get someone up and running to take those funds from another department that could use them. I don't think it's fiscally responsible, and I wouldn't want to do that to them. So that's kind of where I
So
am.
you are positioned for the next fiscal year, not this fiscal year.
Yeah, I would be. Because
I'm talking like 80,000 for like all in on a new officer. Is that like around the cost?
There's going to be it could be anywhere from 60 to 80 plus benefits. Well, the education. So it's going to be the education and the experience. So if we get someone newer to the academy, they're going to be at the lower steps. It's going to take them 5 years to get to the top. Versus if we find someone who's trained and experienced who wants to come here, they could start at the top step. And if they have a master's degree, they could have the educational incentive to win a master's degree too. So
I think all the stories you told here about the changing police force and traditional police work, that's a large portion of the job. I think that's all going to be really important to sell that next position, because I'm not sure everybody's super aware how much it's changed, right? Like, I think people just assume they're out there, they're handing out some speeding tickets, they're at some, MVAs, and then that's that, right? But clearly it's much more complex than that.
yeah, I think it's going to be a reminder of, since we're not too far from it, how COVID has changed everything. The fire services, the police services, highway services, everything's changed. And it's different now. We encompass a lot more with our duties and responsibilities.
All right.
Expenses are all level funded and level services, I think, on here. I'm locked into a lot of contracts, so most of it won't be coming up for another year or two. And usually if I can renegotiate contracts at a cheaper rate and other ones are higher, then I try to keep it level. Building maintenance, I know John and I were just talking about.
We've had some building maintenance discussions.
Yeah, so I just talked to John about, Jeremy, John and myself getting in a room and talking about what could go over to them and what might not be a good idea to go over them. We just talked about cleaning services. Obviously that can go over, that's not a big deal. Get a group discount on it. But then when we deal with like our HVAC, everything's located in our admin wing. When people come out, we have to accompany them because everybody has to be Corey certified at our level. So we can't leave anybody alone to do work in there, especially if they go in my office, the lieutenant's office, the sergeant's office. So that might be something that stays with us just because to have John, John organize it just to get a hold of us, to reorganize it, to set up times that we all can be there. It saves us work on one end, but then creates a lot more work on the other end. And then he has more work too. So I almost think does it create more work? So that's stuff we're gonna have to figure out and see what makes sense too. And part of it
All your
too.
AC equipment to the outside of
Yeah. And I mean, part of it too is I've managed a lot of the building, and I think I've kept that building like new. And I take a lot of pride in that building, so do the officers, and we want to make sure it stays like new. So maybe that's just a part of me that I have to get over it. But I mean, I came in here in 1997, and we had just renovated the old highway barn in 94. And when I came in, it looked like a dump, and it had only been here 3 years. And everybody said how the police department let it go, and I think they did. So I want to make sure this building stays new as long as possible, at least as long as I'm here, and then the next guy have to figure it out.
Elena.
So I just had a question about, so it's unusual to see level funded, level service. So like, I mean, most of the expenses go up a little bit. So can you say a little bit about how like gas and oil, and I mean, some of the services, how are they staying the same?
Gas fluctuates all the time. We've always had a higher gas amount. So gas, we've always budgeted more.
I see. Okay,
And
so you got some
at the end,
padding.
there's some padding for gas, but all the rest are pretty much just renegotiation of contracts. Jeremy looked at our phone lines. I had someone come and take a look at it, and I do it every year, but they came in and saw a couple other things we could cut off. So where I saved somewhere, I'm not going to try to tell the town, well, geez, my printer supplies went up $200, but if I just saved $400 on my phone contracts, I'm going to make sure we balance it off. And looking at our contracts this year, we're pretty balanced off. We've saved a little in some spots, and we're paying more in other spots. So, but I think I've been pretty diligent about that the whole time as chief. And we've had a couple of bumps. I think 2 years ago, we had a bump with building maintenance because the building itself, we didn't realize how much it was going to cost to take care of. I mean, just the contract for HVAC twice a year to change out our 47 filters and tune up the system is over $10,000 there alone. So, and then you add the hot water heater and everything else internally. It's a lot. But I can ask for more if you want.
No, I was just surprised, because usually, I mean, sometimes people cross the level funding and level service terms, and so it's unusual where they align, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I didn't stay on top of it and just took what everybody said as gospel, but I don't. I'll get 3 bids. I'll try to nick sometimes with the technology vendors. They came in the other day with some bid on something. I think they wanted to go up $1,500, and I told them I won't move from 12, and he said my boss won't move. So we play that good cop, bad cop game sometimes with the vendors, and they stuck at the $1,200. So for a 3-year contract. So sometimes I just tell them I don't have any more to give you. But that's what we should be doing as department heads. You know, we shouldn't just blindly say, okay, yep, it's going up. No, put some fight into it. You know, tell them we'll go somewhere else. Sometimes they change their minds.
Good attitude.
So that's police. Anything else on police?
I don't have anything. Finance?
I'm good. Anybody online?
Good here. Thanks.
Cruiser replacement remains unchanged, Chief. We're sticking with the plan we've laid out the last couple of years.
Yeah. I think I said when we went up 3 years ago, this should be good for 10 years. If the price of the vehicles keep going up the way they are, it's not going to be good for 10 years. It may be good for 5 years.
Yeah, they're gonna be as much as a house. So.
Yeah, well, so we've been doing the electrical, we're adding another electric vehicle right now. We have a grant that's probably gonna go back into free cash because they probably won't get reimbursed in time. But I saw Franklin bought some cruisers. They did go with the Tahoes. I didn't put anything special into them. The price tags were over 90,000, all equipped. We're at the Explorers, which are a little bit cheaper. So it's going to take us a little while to catch up to that, but I think 3 or 4 years we'll be where the Tahoes are. And we didn't fall for the trap a few years ago that everybody else did. Everybody got Tahoes and all the local police departments because they were $15,000 cheaper than the Fords. And then what do you know? A few years later, now they're 15,000 more. I knew it was going to happen. You couldn't produce them that cheap. I think they were doing it just being
more fuel, and they're bigger, right?
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, they appeal to law enforcement because they do have a lot of room in it. Fire services too, they appeal to them because you put a lot of gear in there, and Chevy was banging them out really cheap at the time, and a lot of people converted. I think once they had enough convert, they brought the pricing back to where it really should have been. You know, so we never moved from the Explorers. We always kept them.
I mean, I was buying Explorers 6 years ago at like 40 something thousand. It's been crazy to see how that market's moved.
Which one do you want to do next?
So I've got all of them up. So the chief is also responsible for emergency management, animal control, and dispatch. So I've got them all up here. So I just want to bang through them. Start with civil defense, emergency management.
Sure. Civil defense, that's all level services, not level funded though. We had to add $500 for our regional dues. Part of our emergency management, we're part of Uxbridge and Millbury and a big group that we do mock assessments. We do mock scenario tabletop exercises. And it's mostly been funded through the federal government. That money has dried up. So all the communities, and there's 11 or 12 of us, we're all going to contribute towards that to make sure we can still do all this training on a monthly basis. And Mark and myself attend those meetings and do the training. And then we try to bring it back here. We get it back in our routine too. We had an extensive group here that we'd get together and talk about the schools, and things just got away from us. And I think we'll get back to doing that with this group. But it's important to get the information there so we can bring it back to our groups.
But when you guys get back to that, I think the board would love to hear like what the general emergency management plan for the town is.
Sure.
Just at a high level.
Mhm.
I don't think that's something we've talked about in quite some time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark and I have some plans formulated, and then we can give that to you.
Great.
And working on actual plans right now for police and fire. If something would happen, if someone drove it through our building because of what happened recently,
Okay.
Worcester County, people driving through buildings.
Like bullards, I mean, like that, or like
That.
just what the response mechanism?
Yeah, what our response would be as a town, how we relocate operations, if there was a disturbance in operations, what we would do, who's the people we call, who do we get out there, so everything from soup to nuts. Because I didn't think about that. I don't think we have in a long time that someone might drive a truck through the lobby. It's happening now. I figured that to be the last place you want to drive your truck through, like the lobby of a police station. But I think we're always good for that because it's not going to end well for you.
Maybe it'll be hard for them to get to that intersection.
Yeah. So that's it for emergency management. If anybody has any questions, there's not a whole lot for that budget. ACO, Jeremy and I talked about this today. We're going to have another number here. ACO is looking at also incorporating animal inspectors, and we were trying to figure out how to incorporate all the towns, but we have one town that doesn't want to do it. So now we have to break down the budget with our group of what increase we have. I think it's only about $10,000 to the budget, but then that's going to be divided by all our communities. So
The animal inspector?
Yes.
What does an animal inspector do?
And I thought that was in the Board of Health.
No, so the Board of Health and all the other towns, it's been horrible to manage. They don't enjoy managing that personnel. So we came up with the idea altogether on our board for the ACO of including that with the ACO regional that we do. Instead of forming a separate regional animal inspector group.
And that's livestock, kennels.
Livestock, barn inspection, livestock. But a lot of it
Just to remind everyone here and everyone who's listening that we are in a regional intermunicipal agreement, IMA, to provide animal control officer services. So we don't have an animal control officer on our staff. We pay an annual assessment for that service for an employee of Blackstone, of Uxbridge, who's briefed this board before. But this would be in addition to those services, taking the animal inspector, which we talked about in Board of Health earlier, which we had an increase on, and bringing that into the IMA with the animal control officer.
So right now, a regional group, that's the cost of it that we paid last year. It's going to change a little bit this year. And it's a complete staff. So it's not just one ACO. We have 2 full-time ACOs and a few part-times that are available to us every time we have a call. And they have a facility to store animals, to keep animals. They have a vehicle. So everything's taken care of through that group. And I think the total budget's over 200-something thousand, and that's our portion of it that takes care of it. But including the animal inspector, a lot of the duties intertwine. where the ACA will go out and say, okay, we got to call the inspector. They got to come onto this form with you. Once they're doing the form, call us back and we'll come out and we'll do this part with you. So it actually would be easier for the ACOs to incorporate that with extra personnel, because then they could deal with it all one-stop shopping instead of having someone else come and wondering when inspector is going to come out from another town to deal with, a rabid animal. So one town doesn't want to be part of it. So we've broken it out of the regional agreement, and it'll be a stipend-based system. So we're trying to figure that out now. We'll have that in the next couple of weeks. That this is ACO. If you're in it, you have the option to have an animal inspector, and this will be your stipend. And we're thinking it's going to be somewhere around 5,000. So we'll have those numbers in the next couple of weeks for you. But I think the good news with that is you've already budgeted it in Board of Health. So it's simply just moving that into this line item.
Are you able to articulate why that other town doesn't want to be part of it?
The TA in the other town's a lawyer, and tends to think that legally you can't do both, but we've already got decision from the state that you can, and they don't want the ACO performing barn inspections in their town, which they have a lot of barns. They think they should have a separate animal inspector doing that. The other 6 towns were perplexed by it.
Don't we also have a lot of barns?
We used to until they all moved out, right?
Okay.
No more barn inspections on the anymore.
Our council does not share the same concerns.
Yeah. So, and none of the other towns do either. So, so that's why we've broken up, because we don't want to. We had to figure out a way to separate it so they don't get a benefit of the animal inspector. And obviously they don't want to pay more in their regional agreement paying for our animal inspector. So I think we've come down with it's going to be a stipend system, which will work.
So how does that work with the existing personnel?
For ACO?
Animal inspector.
Animal inspector. Well,
it's appointed annually by Board of Health, in the same way that other positions are appointed annually by the select board. So it would just be a kind of competitive procurement, so to speak.
And I've been in contact with Board of Health, with Jack from Board of Health, and they actually encouraged us to go in this direction before we even did. And now that it's there, he's pretty happy about it, because it's going to provide consistency. We've had a lot of animal inspectors, and they come and go. So to have someone consistent, especially if we have a 5-year contract, you don't have to worry about it for 5 years. Set it and forget it. And it's, again, we don't do a whole lot, but if you have someone who's doing 8 towns, then they're going to deal with a lot of issues, and they're going to get more experience to deal with the issues that we deal with. So.
And our ACO is really good right now, so.
Yeah.
So the upshot budgetarily is that animal inspector is not considered here, but you saw the $8,000 in Board of Health earlier. So it will likely be some number lower than $8,000, and we'll take it out of Board of Health and put it here for the ultimate budget vote once we get this kind of evened out. So budget to budget, it will be a savings.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
And then
I guess I should just lead with it will be a savings, and then we could just forego the rest of the conversation.
Let's save money. Good, Mike.
All right, tell us about
dispatch.
Dispatch, yeah.
All right, so dispatch, we're capped at 120. Jeremy spoke to Gary Primo today, the person we've dealt with for the past 5 or 6 years with regional dispatch. We're capped at 120. We'll be capped another 2 years, Jeremy?
Yeah, through fiscal 28, we're capped at an assessment of $120,000.
So right now we have the 120 in there, and then the other expenses in there are just our contractual services, monitoring our security, the fees we pay for radio communications in there, and Signet's in there. That's a big one for our fob system and monitoring everything over there. So those are our fixed costs with contracts, plus the 120. And then Jeremy, I think, is going to talk about adding a placeholder in there to ramp up to where we need to be in the next 3 years.
Yeah, so we are capped. So when we kind of so There is wisdom in regionalization in that it reduces our overall costs. Absolutely. So before we joined the regionalization, we were at roughly, Chief, $500,000 in dispatch costs. And so in our first 7 years, whatever it is, 8 years, through fiscal 28, we are capped on an assessment, on a regional assessment at $120,000. The difference between what the MEC, the Metacom Emergency Communication Center, our regional dispatch, assesses us and what we pay, the difference is paid for by a state 911 grant. So we just got our assessment today, and without that cap, our assessment would be $233,000. So without the state support, which was part of the kind of calculus getting into this, we need to come up with $133,000. Our fiscal 26 uncapped assessment was $220,000. So a $13,000 increase between the years. So if we just say over 28 and 29, we'll see $15,000 on average. So we're at a $260,000 assessment coming in 2029, and in 2027 we're budgeting 120. So we need to come up with $140,000 between now and then. I kind of approximated that at rough at 10%. So I said, all right, let's get 10% of the way there now and put in $15,000 as so-called spacer buffer, and to use that on capital. And we can talk about what capital is, whether it's radios, communication equipment, just public safety writ large, anything in the capital plan. $15,000 is not enough. Right, like I said, it's 10% of the difference that we need there. But we are going to be hit in 2029 with a massive increase in our dispatch costs. But I want to hammer home every time we ever talk about this, that massive increase in dispatch costs is still half of what we would have, probably less than half of what we would have been paying had we not regionalized. So it's still ultimately, and I don't think the board needs to be sold on the wisdom of regionalization for this, but in case anybody else does, it has been, and in my view will continue to be, the fiscally responsible and operationally suitable way to provide dispatch operations. So that $15,000. So should we have, like we did at the end of last year's budget negotiations, or budget discussions, some sort of money that we plugged into FinCom reserve, I'd like to plug any additional resources into this line to be able to build up that spacer in anticipation of what we know is going to happen in fiscal 2029.
So the plan is, as we have additional capacity, that number would increase slowly. So that takes up the slack, basically.
Yeah, in fiscal 2028, even my first pass effort here will be, $75,000, $85,000, just because coming up with $100,000 out of the blue is way more difficult than, building towards it. So the closer we can get to that now, the better. I think it would be irresponsible to say, not irresponsible, it would be unnecessary to get all the way there now. So this is our initial efforts. And then it's not like that money will just go unused. We'll put it in a capital expenditure account, and we can use it for public safety capital between now and then.
It's your initial number, Jeremy, but you're saying if we can put more in there, that would make you happy, correct?
Yeah, that is where that last year I feel like I waffled a little bit between or wavered a little bit between where $10,000 should go or not. That is not the case this year. If we have $1, it should go here.
Carl?
I'm not seeing a row for dispatch $120,000. Is that part of the general expenses row?
Yeah, so that 159, it's 120 for our assessment from the regional dispatch MEC, and then the other 39 is the stuff that the chief talked about with contracted expenses for things like cameras and maintenance contracts and things like that.
If you want to set up a buffer fund specifically for dispatch, does it make sense to have it called out as a separate row?
Yeah, that's what the $15,000 is, as a separate row.
Okay.
The new capital account.
Yes, because you put it in blue because you don't want it coming out of the blue.
Yeah, I wanted to, it's different, it's new, it's something we don't typically do, so I wanted to at least draw a little attention to it.
I was making a joke.
I make the jokes, girl.
Was that a joke?
And if anybody, if this becomes an issue later on, obviously we got to bring money in this year, you got to bring money next year, and then eventually we're going to get to the 260 if it's that at that point. And people are going to say, well, geez, why do we have to pay all this money? We got to go back to the initial point before COVID, before inflation. We did the numbers. By the time we hit full assessment, we will have saved $2 million on 2019 standards. So who knows what that equates to now, $2.5 million that went into our operational budget. And we're still paying half of what we paid in 2019.
This will not be a hard discussion.
Yeah, I don't think the value proposition of regionalization is the issue.
But for us, but the general public who says, well, geez, why are we adding $120,000 to dispatch and aren't we supposed to be saving money?
Yeah, I honestly think this will not be an issue on the floor, in my mind.
I want to throw out there before I get to Carl again, that the general sentiment though might be that we're raising the police budget over $200,000 in the next 3 years, right? Because we're not just increasing dispatch, we need more employees and they cost the same amount almost as dispatch, right? So that's, we just have to be cognizant that I know this is another area, but it's still essentially police going up in cost. And so
It's public safety.
It's public safety. It's under police. It's public safety. It's fire. It's police. It's highway.
Right, and we've got other things with fire. So there's just like proportionally, our budget for public safety in general is going to be a lot higher, even without us doing a whole lot.
I think as a proportion of the overall budget, including schools, it's not going to be significantly larger than it is. I mean, it might go up a little percentage wise.
Yeah.
It will be in the same ballpark.
Yes, contextually, yes. Carl, go ahead.
Is dispatch expensive because you need 24/7 coverage?
There's a myriad of reasons why it's expensive. One, exactly, you need 24 coverage, but then you need trained professionals.
And 911 phone service is probably an extra cost.
It's just running a whole new department. So you're going to have salaried employees. You're going to have overtime costs. Everything you have in my department, you're going to have in that department. You're going to have vacation time that you have to backfill with overtime. And then the training is extensive. You're going to have to get people who are EMD certified, who can tell you how to do CPR over the phone, people who can be calm, collective, and deal with the 911 calls that come in. So dispatch is going to be expensive no matter what. And to be honest with you, I think in Massachusetts, we actually do it pretty cheap. Because what we require them to do in other states, they don't do what we do. They just answer a phone and they pass it along. We do a lot in this state, and regionalize is the best way to get the bang for your buck. Because if a major incident happens in Mendon, a house fire, we used to have one dispatcher trying to handle that. And I remember being a sergeant and going in and helping a dispatcher when we had a big fire, and I couldn't even handle it with them. The nice thing with regional is they have 10 dispatchers on at a time. The likelihood of all 10 towns being, all 6 towns, 7 towns in it being busy is slim. They're going to have 3 or 4 dispatchers handling our fire. If we have a medical, they're going to have 2 to 3 dispatchers helping out with that CPR and organizing and directing people. So I think you get a bigger bang for your buck and you only lose minimal. We don't have coverage on the 4 to 12. You have to talk to a camera. Same thing on midnight. We don't really have a lot of activity on the midnight. I'm a big proponent of regionalization. If you talk to a lot of my fellow chiefs, they hate it. They want the dispatch in their police station. I think we've gone past that. We can't have 361 dispatch centers. We need to start regionalizing a lot more. There's a reason we're one of the most expensive states to live in. We like our small town atmosphere, but there's a cost to it too.
Don't we know it?
That answer,
There's
Carl?
also there's a significant capital outlay on the equipment that dispatchers need, as well as the software that they use. So it's not one-to-one, but there's 6 communities in the MEC, and there's a fire dispatching software that the MEC uses. So rather than paying for that 6 times over, they pay for that 1.5 times or 2x times or whatever it is for the level of licensing that they need. So we certainly benefit from economies of scale on that aspect, but there is a large capital outlay necessary for what dispatchers do too.
Yeah. And I'm not sure the percentage, Jeremy, I'm sure you probably have it on hand, but we've joined with bigger communities. So our responsibility for that budget is like 5%.
Give me a sec.
But we get the same services as a Franklin, you know, but we're paying 5% of the cost.
My question maybe is more for Jeremy. The vehicle that we're using here, this new capital account, in order to be able to offset, you know, the rising expense we're trying to prepare for, should that be a capital account? Did I hear that we have the opportunity to spend that capital? Because is the point of this is to be able to save so that in 2 fiscal years, when that bill comes, we've got more money available to that, right? So this is just trying to build this up over time.
I don't think it's saving.
Yeah,
I
so-
think it's a placeholder, right? Jeremy, it's a
So this
placeholder.
is- Yeah, so this is twofold. Like, so we are not going to realize that expense in 27 and 28. But if we don't have that placeholder in the budget, that $15,000 or that $65,000, whatever, is going to be spent elsewhere. So then when we need it in fiscal 29, it's going to be a pain to wherever we take it from. It will be a reduction from somewhere else. So what this does is it says we're going to appropriate it here and we're going to spend it here in the current year. And then we're going to take that same levy capacity and use it in 28, and it won't be in 29, and then it won't be taking away from something else. So kind of 27 and 28, that capital is gravy, is otherwise would otherwise be unavailable capital spending for public safety operations. And then we'll use it just for our ongoing needs. Whereas if we didn't appropriate it, or if we appropriated it somewhere else, it would be more painful in 2029 to reappropriate. So it's I have it as capital, so we can spend it once and then not spend it again. Because if we use that $15,000 to go hire a 5-hour-a-week whatever, then in 2029 we would have to, you know, fire that person to be able to use that money somewhere else. So it is a placeholder in terms of budget capacity, but then by appropriating it, rather than let it go as untaxed levy, we get the current year benefit of whatever the capital project we decide to target is.
Yeah, and if we don't manage to spend it.
Rolls to free cash.
Yeah, and if we don't spend it, it goes to free cash.
Stabilization. So.
So what I've shared here, so this is how the MEC does their funding formula. So we take the number of 911 calls per community and then the population, and then use that as a blended formula and the total assessment. So we have it didn't change at all between calendar year 24 and calendar year 25. So we are responsible for 7% of the MEC's total assessment. This is, I don't know why I can't highlight, but this is us here. Whereas communities like Franklin are responsible for 42% and Rentham responsible for 20%.
And that kind of tells you what our call volume.
And you can see our call volume and our population is somewhat similar to the total percentage. Whereas a place like Rentham, their population is 16% of the community, but their 911 calls are 24% of the community. So that's why we use both, because the population represents our kind of exposure to possible calls, and then 911 calls represent our actual costs and how much the center generates. So there are lots of people who go to the outlets who don't live in Rentham and generate 911 calls, and we want to be able to capture that in our funding formula.
So amazed about the savings.
And when I was talking about call volume earlier, that shows you just what Mendon gets just for 911. Never mind the regular lines that we get and everything else we have to do. And again, that 1,018, a good portion of that's going to be fire. I mean, they're 500 calls, but for us, it's a true 1,018 because we're supposed to go into the fire calls too. So our call volume is extensive. And when you think of like a midnight shift, there's 2 on right now, and 4 to 12, there's 3 on, so 1 being a supervisor, 2 sector cars. And a lot of the time I don't backfill. So I just use my overtime to fill up when we have less than 2 on. But I mean, I came from a time when we started, we had 2 on and we didn't backfill the 1. Mike was a select board member back then. I worked a midnight shift, 1 day shift, 1. We can't do that anymore. It's a different world and it's not safe. It wasn't safe then.
I just point of order here. I mean, I keep hearing about all the calls, and how busy they are. I'm here trying to give him an extra body in this fiscal year, and he said no.
I want it tomorrow though. The promise is I want it next year. I want it, not today, tomorrow.
All right, does anybody have any additional questions for the chief on any of his various budget responsibilities? All right, then, chief, we'll let you go home. We appreciate your time tonight.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Don, last but not least. Sorry. First off, thank you. Being so awesome. Thank your crew for being so awesome. We all drove here on roads that were cleared, so we do appreciate it. And I saw the guys out yesterday moving snow up the sides a little bit more, so we appreciate all that work. I know it's hard.
I will pass along the message to the guys.
Thank you.
Enough salt to pre-treat the roads this time.
Barely.
Barely, okay, all right, but I do notice a difference. though.
Yeah, keep hitting this thing for. We could use some salt. We have it on order, but everybody else does too, so we just have to wait. We have some, so we're good.
In talking with staff today, John, and in my own personal experience, almost universally, people said commuting from the town in which they live into Mendon, that the roads were worse until they got to Mendon. So that's not a slight against other communities. It was a storm of historic proportions. But even under difficult circumstances, it's been recognized by town staff that you and your department and contractors did an extraordinary job to get everything passable and cleaned up. So from the staff as well, I just want to say thank you, and it's been recognized.
Well, I'll put the opposite on that. My son was very disappointed at how clean the roads were, and he wasn't able to take advantage of the fact that there were no cars on the road after the flight, so.
Tell him I'm sorry.
It's true, I mean, and some kids might be disappointed that there weren't more snow days, so.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that if there was another snow day, I might have ended up divorced.
Yeah, my wife would drink what is going ever.
All right, John, why don't you bring us through the finer points of your
We are
budget?
starting with highway, right? Jeremy's, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, highway and streets.
Yeah, so certainly I'll just give kind of the general, we talked about this a little bit with parks before. So you'll see some notes here about from parks. So this is the field maintenance, $7,000 was moved from parks. This is an additional $8,000 request. So I'll let John talk about the additional. Equipment maintenance, parks is no longer responsible for mowing and whatnot. So that got moved here. Same with gas and oil. The fuel budget from parks got moved here. The uniforms, we've got new employees that need new uniforms, and then we've got some seasonal folks, and then just stuff is more expensive now. So we're going to see an increase there, but generally that's level service. And then up top on salary and wages. So we do have a settled contract with the highway union, but we have one vacancy in which we don't know the step we're necessarily going to bring someone else in on and when we're going to bring them in. And then we have one person at the laborer. So to remind everyone, we've got a 10-step scale for the heavy equipment operator. The laborer scale tops out at 5. To kind of encourage folks to get their licenses and certifications to move to the heavy equipment operator, because we find that to be a far more useful role. Not that laborers are not useful, but when you have a CDL and a hoisting license, you can do more. So we've got one laborer who's in there now, and we've budgeted for a partial year upgrade from laborer to heavy equipment operator. And then the seasonal staff, which was previously budgeted in the parks department at $32,500, has been moved here. I did this last year, but just to reiterate to folks, I'm giving rounded budget amounts because I don't want to give an amount, $563,212.18. I feel like that gives a false sense of certainty and false sense of specificity. So I tend to round up to the nearest, $500 or $1,000 to make it kind of show its approximate value rather than make you think we have a very specific cent value we're going to spend. So we have the seasonal here, and so John can talk a little bit about the differences in approaches of what we're going to do with seasonal labor. But because that's all grounds falling under the purview of the grounds foreman, we've moved that into the highway budget here. And then meetings and dues. This is something I talk about almost every department and pretty much every year that as a percentage of our budget, what is short money, I think the best thing we can do is invest in our staff and their professional development and training. And so this adds some specific opportunities for professional development, but then throughout the year as stuff pops up, it just gives the opportunity for John as department head to say, hey, I want you to go to X, Y, and Z. And I think that gives department heads kind of ownership over their own department's development, but also leaves the town with better and better equipped employees who feel like we're supporting their own professional development. So I will always advocate for increases there. So then I'll turn over to John on some of the specifics in the board for any questions.
I guess it's just questions. You kind of said everything I was going to say, so.
Sorry.
So, Select Board, do you have any questions? Did I just see a Carl disappear? Carl? Yeah, Carl?
Yes. Could I ask for a high-level overview of what you consider to be the difference between a piece of property, which is parks, and now a piece of property which would be managed by this department?
There is none.
So basically with the reorganization that we did last year with making a facilities, grounds and highway department, maintenance of town properties falls under our purview of grounds now. So parks is more of the programming, the beach, the camp, they're more of a programming now, and the maintenance part falls to us.
So,
And like operational things like the snack shack and the lights and things like that would fall under parks. But then if we need to, like I said, oversee it or bring in loam or regrade or do a parking lot or something like that, that would all fall under grounds and facilities.
so a field is a field, right? And that field is going to be taken care of by your.
We have.
I'm just saying, I'm just being very clear that there won't be a separation where there's parks fields that are maintained by differently than a highway field.
No, I guess the easy, simple way to look at it is if it's anything maintenance related, it falls to us.
Yeah, we have zeroed out the parks budget, which gave them ability to do that sort of thing. So if there's grass that needs to be cut, if there's a drain or stormwater that needs to be fixed, if there's anything, the Parks Department no longer has a budget to do that. That is all within highway, grounds, and facilities.
Except at the beach.
So the maintenance of the beach is still taken care of by the grounds department. And if there's an issue with the building at the beach, it would be handled by facilities. But as far as the snack shack goes or that building, like them using it, that is parks that's using it. But if it's maintenance, it's us that has to deal with it.
And
so sorry, go on, Chair.
It's hard because you're such a strong talker. I can't overtalk you. It's the only person that I can't overtalk. It's the mic. It's picking you. So I just wanted to. So under capital, so we increase equipment maintenance because like there's parks equipment. So of course you got to bring that from parks and do that work. there's no increase in capital equipment, like where there's no need to plan for additional mowers or any of that, or like that was already built.
It's yet to be planned.
Okay.
And that will be when we start to discuss capital. The mowers right now are in good working order, and so it's just, we have to decide when they're gonna need to be replaced.
So we can expect like in future years, you're gonna have to increase these lines.
There was also discussion, and Jeremy, you were involved in this, in that there is some money that can be used from the revolving account to purchase things.
The
like
parks revolving account.
Yes. They have money set aside to do purchases like that. Or if we go through our facilities maintenance budget, there is some money there that we utilize.
Okay.
There's a lot of equipment that's in the capital plan today for future years, like mowers and things like that.
There is.
Yeah.
Right. That the capital planning committee's been chatting about. All right. Ron, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, quick question. So for the building maintenance, is that the actual highway department building, correct?
That is the building for the highway department.
Right. So underneath it, the gas and oil, is that for equipment or is that for the building, or is it both? In other words, is the building, I'm assuming the building maintenance, does that include utilities and everything else?
Yeah.
Okay. So the gas and oil underneath would be then for your equipment.
It's for the equipment and for the oil for the building.
For the building, okay. Okay, so some of that, the 29,550 is for both the building and for your equipment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brendan.
This is just for my own curiosity. So with the integration of the field maintenance and all of this equipment into the highway department, is that equipment being physically moved down to the highway garage? And
Some of it has, some of it has still stayed over at Morrison Drive, and we're exploring options on where we're gonna keep that.
When is your new storage going to be built?
That's a discussion that is gonna come back to capital. Jeremy, we had talked about this the other day as well, right? Ran into an issue with where that building was gonna go, and then looking at it, and in hindsight, we should have been looking at, okay, grounds was gonna happen, we could utilize a bigger building.
Okay.
So.
Which then requires slab and kind of more engineering than we initially had proposed. So the rather than spend the money now, we want to make sure we have the request right sized for what their square footage and operational needs are. So it may require an additional ask of town meeting to be able to engineer the slab, design the slab, and then slightly larger construction costs. It won't be orders of magnitude larger, but it will be an additional cost. So rather than build an undersized building now, we want to make sure we understand the need before we do any outlay.
As if you remember, when we discussed that building, it was gonna be a pole barn.
Right.
So there was no floor in it. If we're gonna store equipment in it, then there needs to be a floor. It needs to be designed differently.
So you have to grade that area and slab.
So it actually would, that area where I was gonna put it is not gonna suffice, because as we started to dig into that, and when the building was built, there was really no plans. We found that the pipe that goes from the septic system to the leach field out back runs right through where that building
Oh,
is.
how nice.
So in order to do that, put the building there, we would have to redirect that pipe around.
So now you're thinking the back.
So down back, we've cleaned up a large area down back, and we could put a 3-bay, same type of building, electricity only, nothing, no workshops or anything but storage, a 3-bay. I don't want to say pole barn, because pole barns don't require a foundation or a slab, but something similar.
But Jeremy, we're gonna have the abacus discussion for the senior center in April, May timeframe.
Yep,
I mean,
along with the Taft trustees rectory discussion.
So we'll have to figure out how to structure that conversation.
well, I know, I mean, I think it gets back to the original discussion about space and possibly the reuse of certain buildings. I think we really gotta be focused on having sort of a decision made in certain areas.
So we talked about that too, in that kind of the Morrison Drive shell building is not workable as a senior center alternative site. So whether that becomes a storage facility for grounds and facilities is also kind of why, we got the money appropriated. But as we ran into these kind of leaching field issues and then slab and bigger issues, we said we don't want to spend this money until we have a little bit more certainty. So yeah, totally agree that any action on facilities and grounds building needs to wait until after we have not necessarily finality, but clarity on what the senior and community center is.
I think there's a lot of dominoes out there, Jeremy, in terms of fire, senior center, library. I mean, these are all interrelated to some degree, so we could start to, put some clarity around direction where we think we're going and make a decision, even if it doesn't end up that way, but to allow some of these other projects to move forward.
I will say that I've been talking with both the fire chief and the deputy fire chief about a plan for Morrison that would benefit both the fire department and highway grounds and facilities department as a whole. So we will be having a discussion about it and maybe putting something together too.
Yeah, I think the fire though needs to have a study done on what their needs are. I mean, I don't think it's going to be halfway done on that one because that's too critical.
Yeah, they seem to be like just in this phase where they're piecemealing through the building, like even having the admin come over and they're having to work some space for that. Like it's getting complicated.
But I mean, I do think, and a campus approach to that general area is what I've talked to the chief about. And, I've actually watched his, training burns with all those little.
I was thinking monorail.
I was like, wow, you can burn things over there, chief. You can have your build out that building and there's some wetlands in between. You got to work that out. But yeah, no, I think there's opportunity in that space. I just think we need to kind of chunk that out, Jeremy, so we know where we're targeting what for what areas.
Yeah, I'm generally appreciative of the sentiment among department heads that budgets are limited and we don't want to spend too much money. But we're trying to say, let's frame it as what do you need, and then figure out how we can, or if we can get there, rather than say, what are the constraints and let's build the good enough for now solution within that. So we're trying to a little bit of a mindset shift on how we think about changes.
To do it.
Alrighty. Does anybody have anything more on highway and streets?
Just line item on field maintenance. What is 8,000 to do new stuff? What is new stuff?
Yeah, that's inarticulate. I'm sorry.
I do have some information about that. So this year alone, we went over that 7,000 in, we have had to dip into road materials funding, which I know we're not supposed to, but at a cost of $3,517 for, we had loom for the Memorial Park ball field to fix the fields, millings for the Memorial Park parking lot. I don't know if you guys have been up there, and it's that back lot of the playground, that's all the stones and everything. So we put millings in there and kind of leveled that off to make it a little better. It's just things like that, that now we have this new staff member that is full-time. There is a lot more stuff that we can do. And I'm just looking, like having more money to be able to do those. Like I said, we dipped into our road materials budget to do some of this stuff.
It's not new stuff. You're not budgeted at a level that allows you to do what you need to do to maintain fields and facilities.
They didn't have the staff to complete the work, even if they had the budget, I feel like, right?
Well, we've got the staff. My point is you're staffed. Now you've got to right size your budget to optimize the staff we already decided to hire and hire. So my point is, when you say new stuff, I had the same question, Mike. I was like, what kind of?
It's not, you know, it's not,
We're gonna be on field maintenance here.
it's
New
not,
stuff.
it's not new stuff. It's
Yeah.
stuff that has needed to be done for a
Oh,
while.
yeah, but it's, yeah, and you're
Being proactive.
We were borrowing from road materials, so I guess a better frame would be to continue to do the road maintenance stuff that we borrowed from instead. So there were road materials money that wasn't spent in favor of field maintenance stuff. So as long as we can right size the field maintenance budget, we can continue to do field maintenance and road maintenance at the level required.
Is there a punch list of things that helped you get to that 8,000 number? I'm not even asking, is this
There-
high? Like, is it too low based on?
There isn't, and I didn't want to come in and ask for $20,000. I said, next year we may say, hey, even 8,000 wasn't enough with what we're trying to get acconched. We may be asking for more.
Yeah.
But I didn't, like I said.
See what you can do.
Yeah.
right. I mean, similar to Mike saying, I'd say we've invested in resources. Our highest cost is people, labor.
Yeah.
So we've invested in the people. I want to make sure that we're keeping them busy. If that means we got to get to 10 or 15, let's do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we've invested in the reorganization the right way.
And
It's optimized.
only having half a season with the grounds person, it's tough to say whether we need more
That's
money.
right.
So this is just kind of like, let's bump it up and next year maybe 8,000 more.
And what I might suggest is, as you start to do this, we've always got free cash to tap. So I would not limit, you need to understand what your capacity is with the staff you have. So you should go hog wild, run hot on the budget. If you need to supplement it because you got good work getting done, that's what SPM is for. That's what, you know what I mean? Free cash is for. So don't limit yourself is my point.
Correct.
All right. I'm not gonna ask again because every time I ask, somebody asks a question. So why don't you talk to us about snow and ice?
Snow and ice. We already talked about this snow and ice a few weeks ago, but for the finance committee, you see the ask for an additional $5,000, and that is because we recently have purchased a one would be a weather forecasting software, or however you want to word it. But basically what it does is it gives us a hyper local forecast on a daily basis on what's going to happen in Mendon. It's right now you get your forecast at 2 a.m. when there's no weather coming in. When we have a storm coming in, and both of you saw that the other day, where they will send us updates 2 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 8 p.m. and they'll tell you inch of snow by this time, and you're going to get this much. This is the duration of the storm. The temperatures are going to fluctuate. Like the amount of information they give you, they've been pretty accurate so far this year. So that cost for that's precision weather forecasting is a yearly cost of $1,595. That gives us the whole year. So yeah, winter is what we're paying for it out of snow and ice because we're primarily using it in winter, but we're going to get a hurricane. It's going to be the same thing. They're going to give us these detailed forecasts. We also have, so this is what he's showing you right here. Jeremy's got it on the screen. So
yeah, you can see here, it says, prepared exclusively for Mendon at 1 o'clock. We have temperatures, road temperatures is what, highway's also looking at too, little notes on it, and then kind of hour by hour. I use this to smugly tell my wife that her Weather Channel app doesn't accurately predict what's going to happen. And I use this instead.
You look at these other apps, Weather Channel or AccuWeather, and then you look at this forecast that they're giving us there. They don't line up.
So I'm going to channel my inner Mike Goddard. Is there a way to connect this up to the OpenGov system for local residents to be able to have access to this information?
I don't believe so. I think that
Great question. I want to roll with it.
don't believe so, and I think Precision Weather is, they try to keep it close to the chest. They don't want that information getting out because they have this market.
I think to understand the value, the finance committee needs to also be able to make sure we're getting the right value.
You should see
So
that.
I'm not against that, but I need to make sure that we're not limited on the amount of people that are logging in.
Yeah, obviously.
So,
Right
so
now,
for
Eric
$1,500
has
a year, $1,500 a year, if we're able to call in folks to plow an hour later for five, because we have better precision for 5 storms a year, it pays for itself at that point.
And there's also, I forgot to mention, but there's a team in there of 4 meteorologists, and they have a meteorologist on call 24/7. So if I'm seeing something that wasn't forecasted, I can call them and say, or hey, your app says this. What are you seeing for the next hour? Is it just, can I send the guys home? Or they will answer those questions to the best of their ability. You actually talk to somebody, and that's 24/7.
Just to be safe, specifically the chair of the FinCom should get access just to evaluate on behalf of the whole FinCom.
I like where he's at.
The second one is, well, first, is there any more questions about the weather app?
Seems kind of cute, but yeah.
When you guys all the
I'm just saying, like, it's pretty amazing for what we face. Like, that's,
secondly, all of our town vehicles now have GPS units in them that can give us speed, location. It's also plugged into the computer systems for the trucks, so it's diagnosing everything that's going on, and it is sending trouble codes back to us before they turn into a major failure. So then we're seeing we can fix things or prevent things before they actually happen. On top,
how long has that like been?
Yeah. On top of that, we're asking to pay for that out of snow and ice because we have got the GPS units for all of the plow contractors as well. Not to that extent. They plug it into a cigarette lighter when I call them, and now I can see where they are. And it does go back to the resident calls and says, oh, your plow truck just went by here at 30 miles an hour. And I can look at it and be like, no, actually he was doing 20, or my road didn't get plowed for 3 hours. And I'm like, well, you were there an hour ago. So it's a nice tool to have. So that cost for the 6 months with the GPS units is 1818. So $1,018 or $1,818. The remainder of the 6 months where we'll keep them in our town trucks will be paid out of our operational budget.
So I'll address the question that those two numbers don't add up to 5,000, but we regularly deficit spend through this anyway. And for folks who weren't at the meeting a couple weeks ago, Select Board authorized $125,000 worth of deficit spending in the snow and ice budget. And that was before we had a blizzard. So we'll come back with an update in a couple of meetings. And also, I think everyone here knows, but municipalities are allowed to deficit spend in this area so long as we budget the same or greater as we did the prior year. And then that deficit can either be made up through existing budgetary availability, through existing free cash stabilization, or raise it on the subsequent year's levy, which becomes a policy decision as we get towards balancing the budget. So even though that $5,000, so right now, that adds up to what, $3,200 or something like that, $3,400. We will absolutely spend that in more within the snow and ice budget. So it's a rounded approximation. It's something so we don't have to come back in 28 and say we need an additional $800 or whatever it is, because we're certainly going to spend it in snow and ice.
There's also the other discussion about those weather stations. So we talked about, and then so basically what you could do is you could put a weather station out here in the center of town, and it would give us access to see what the roads look like. It gives us road temperatures. It gives us conditions. It allows us to see everybody else in that network across the state. And so that would have the camera. You could put additional weather stations in other parts of town where it's just giving you data without the camera view. And that could be paid for out of that budget as well.
Mr. Goddard.
Just back to the GPS, the thing that I mentioned, the proactive nature of telling, preemptive maintenance, things like that. Is there any benefit to looking at this fleet-wide across other town vehicles?
I don't know if the chief has them in his vehicles, the police chief has them in his vehicles or not. I mean, I would say there's a benefit to it in that
I don't know if there's like a cost per car or.
It is. So it is,
Verizon, right? You
yeah,
said.
it's Verizon Connect, and it is $15.95 a month per unit, per GPS unit.
I'd be curious, does Jeremy see if there's any benefit to that? I don't know if you ever
So-
surprised.
From the police and fire perspective, that already happens through our dispatch software. So dispatch can pull up and see where every unit is already. And then outside of highway, police and fire, the town units we have are the Council on Aging van and a Nissan Leaf. So we could spend.
100 miles.
Programs is included in this.
Okay.
It will be, yes. As they fall under that, the new grounds truck that has been ordered will be plowing snow next winter, and it will be utilized throughout the summer, obviously. So we will have a GPS in it so that we can track and diagnose it.
So something for the senior center van or the potential Explorer, Jeremy, that'd be actually small dollars to put some monitoring on those vehicles as well.
Yeah, that's like what, $180 a year or something for each of those. So yeah, worth exploring to know where our investments are at.
Carl? You're on mute.
Yep, I leave myself on mute so you don't hear me sneezing. I had 3 questions and I'd compliment you on answering them already. What's a truck GPS? Why is it in the snow and ice removal? And what's the discrepancy between the budget and the amounts given? So you're stealing my thunder. I'm running out of things to ask.
All right. Good job, Mr. Highway Surveyor.
Superintendent.
Superintendent, my bad. I was going old school for a second.
That's Dr. T.
That's Dr. T. That's exactly it. All right. So, does anybody have anything additional for John on highways and streets and snow and ice? I guess we'll look forward to a future discussion on the building and whatnot. And now, all right, public building and property maintenance.
So I'll do the intro here too. So same idea. So our parks and recreation director is at 20 hours 5 hours per week at that, 5 hours per week on water and 15 hours a week on facilities. So that's in here on salaries and wages, but that's a union contract that's not settled. Contracted services are things like our cleaning largely. Utilities, lights, and fuel is pretty self-explanatory. It's a pretty healthy budget, but a small inflationary increase there. Supplies, we haven't really been purchasing cleaning supplies for town hall and other buildings in ways that I think we should. So that's been coming out of the select board budget. So I put it in here. And then equipment maintenance hasn't been utilized as much as I thought. And then building maintenance, small inflationary piece too. So this is the piece that was funded at special town meeting in the fall of 2024, and then funded as part of the fiscal 2026 budget at $78,000. And this is what we talked about the windows at the library or at the senior center yesterday, where the basement windows weren't covered in the town meeting article. So this covers that sort of thing. And the day we had our ADA self-evaluation and transition plan kickoff meeting, the door opener at the top of our ramp broke, and we no longer had our most accessible entrance available as we were doing our ADA evaluation kickoff. So it paid for stuff like that. So it is kind of known things that we like, stuff like windows that we know we want to do, and then these kind of one-offs that, you know, we don't know about, and then they happen right away. So this is the sort of stuff that people put in tickets for. This is the sort of stuff that John as highway super and Dan and facilities coordinator and notice and want to take care of. So there's not a, these are the 30 things that build up this budget. It's more of a as needed sort of thing. And it's the preventative maintenance and the investment in our current plant, spend $1 today rather than $100 tomorrow approach.
Utilities, lights and fuel. Lights is street lights, or lights is lights, just electricity?
Yep, streetlights is a different department, entirely a different department code. I don't have it here. I'll present it in kind of my wrap up to say this is everything else we haven't yet talked about. But this is town hall lights, annex building, fuel for both the buildings, and then you know, the campus lighting as well.
And this includes adjustments after our utility changes earlier this year, or we were always level budgeted for that and it was just dropping to free cash?
The latter, it was just falling through to free cash. To remind everyone, there was a meter that wasn't reading, and we essentially paid nothing in fiscals 24 for town hall electricity.
This is a bargain, yeah. So are there any questions for John or Jeremy about public building and property maintenance? All right. Do you have any other interesting facts you want to share with us tonight, John?
Nope.
Then you should go home and get some rest. And we really appreciate you coming out and being our last one for tonight.
Yeah, no, I have nothing else to add.
All right.
So no more stuff.
I don't know if we can help you with that a whole lot, because I saw some flakes on my not reliable weather app.
I want to know when this snow's gonna melt off my roof.
Yeah,
It's gonna be pushing 50 degrees this weekend, so.
Even my phone says that, like on Saturday, and it's gonna be like high 50.
Yeah. So then John has to deal with stormwater issues, which is also within his purview. So.
I don't want it to melt too fast.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Jeremy, do you have any wrap up thoughts?
So this was our last department head meeting. If there are, so what I will do, again, anticipate going on leave through the middle through end of March. I'll be back in April. So we'll schedule another joint meeting for Finance Committee and Select Board at some point in April to go through kind of I say non-departmental, but the stuff that doesn't have a department head budget necessarily. I'm thinking IT, streetlights, things like that. I think planning wants to come back and talk a little bit about some changes to their off general fund budget approach, which don't have any sort of taxpayer or expenditure takeaways, but have a little bit of a change in the way we spend money and want to not make it seem like we're pulling a fast one, want to make sure everyone's involved in it. So we'll have a wrap up at that point, and then have a hopefully have a House Ways and Means number in April, and we'll come back and hopefully have a town hall union contract and individual contracts signed as well. So likely some point between now and that meeting, we'll have executive sessions with Select Board to say, you know, here's the individual contracts, here's the union contract. And then have at least one more meeting to say, kind of go through the same things. Here's the decision. Here's how much money we have. Here's the decisions to make. Yes or no. Do you want to fund it? And then I'll have a few different ways to, you know, fund those within the levy or otherwise. And then one of the major drivers, you know, is tomorrow's meeting with the schools. So MURSD, there's a joint meeting tomorrow with Finance Committee and Select Boards. So we'll know a little bit more at that point. So now these meetings were just to say, here's what's in the, possibility to be asked for. And then we'll actually present you with the trade-offs and the policy decisions in April. That's all I got.
Carl, 30 seconds.
A general question for Jeremy. Yesterday and today's presentations have been missing this union contract negotiations. Is it typical, this is my first year in the FinCom, is it typical that it would be this late, or is there some other reason for why this one's still in progress?
Historically, this is early.
So what? So if by the budget vote we don't have a union contract or individual contracts, what this salary line would have is the existing level wages. And then in a centralized reserve for negotiation in the select board budget in Department 122, there will be a reserve for negotiation, which is the aggregate of all unsettled contracts, either union or otherwise. So what that does, if I put a number in here, and this is me making it up, but it's $20,700 in the current year for the incumbent facilities coordinator, 15 hours. If I put in $30,100 here, the union would be able to back into, okay, they can afford an X% COLA. And we kind of don't want to give away our bargaining position and our affordability position in that way. So what we would do is aggregate all that stuff in a reserve for negotiation in a central account and budget what our existing contracts are. So it's not that we would pass a budget that has a zero there. The zero there is just because I don't want to do the math a bunch of times. So there's actually in a column to the right of additional notes in my budget spreadsheet that's not presented here that has my placeholder in it. And that's how I'm doing my math. But if there is not a contract, there'll be a central number. And if there is a contract, you'll have an actual number.
Yeah, there's no reason for you to do the work now, the math now, if the contract means you don't need to do it.
Yep, totally. Good question, though. It's because it's not apparent. Yeah.
BBT. Yes, Jeremy. BBT. Do you want to hit that for 1 second?
Yep. So BBT, that was the meeting that was canceled on Monday because they were the only one presenting. There is a lottery system. Good night, John. There's a lottery system dictating enrollment for future years that will not impact the fiscal not have an effect on the fiscal 2027 budget because enrollment is based upon the October 1 prior year enrollment. So once BVT presents their budget to their school committee on March 5th, we'll schedule something for them to come and talk to this joint board again. But it seemed premature to have them come talk only about the lottery system and not about the budget and have that be the only meeting. The upshot from the lottery system with the apportionment that BVT is doing is that there will be a decrease in the number of students enrolled at BVT from Mendon. Right now, as a percentage of, a blended percentage of 8th grade population and total population, Mendon makes up about 5% of the constituent communities, which equates to about 50 odd students. Don't pin me on a number because BVT won't be pinned on a number, but in the low 50s for 4th grade enrollment. And we currently have about 70 in the low 70s number. So over the next 5 years, they will admit fewer students from Mendon to get to this apportioned number. And that will decrease our assessment from BVT. That will increase our assessment from Mendon Upton Regional, assuming all those students then go there and not a private school. But the marginal cost there is typically less for a number of reasons. So the ultimate budget shakeout won't be felt until 2028, and then 5 to 7 years on as they kind of smooth that enrollment change. But generally, our assessment from BVT will be a little bit lower than what I anticipated in my budget projection. I appreciated, I met with leaders there for about 2 hours recently. And their approach was CAMRAM, cut a million, raise a million, and said they were going to try to limit per student assessments to a 2.5% increase from fiscal 26 to 27 as a reflection of the 2.5% Prop 2.5 world that we live in. So I appreciated that kind of partnership approach, and hope that continues and is manifested in our assessment from them, which I think it will be. So that's where we're at. Cost savings, hopefully.
Awesome.
All right, FinCom, do you want to close your meeting?
Need a motion to adjourn the FinCom meeting.
I so move.
Second,
All those in favor?
Carl Hummel, yes.
Ron
Jesse-
Zamuto, yes.
Jesse Crowley.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Your aye. Adjourned at 9:10 p.m.
All right, so the next select board meetings are tomorrow night, 6 p.m., March 4th, 6:30 p.m., March 18th, 6:30 p.m. And so we will see you there. Be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? Right, we're not supposed to say that. All those in favor? Aye. All those against? That's probably not allowed either. Have a great night. It's 9:12. See you, Jeremy.
Good night, everyone.
You